Okay, this is the first lesson in my course on Introduction to Sociology. This first lesson is rather extensive. It will probably take 6 actual 1-hour lessons for this. This is the first. To begin, I want to introduce myself. My name is James Tajiri, and this is kind of my background. Since I was a kid, I always had a rather inordinate interest in the military and warfare. Very strange. I'd spend countless hours, reading books on military history into the wee hours. Yeah, as a small child, as like, a third, fourth, fifth grader, right? When most kids are just, not reading very much at all, or reading very simple books. I was reading, books on military history, and it just fascinated me. And then I joined the Navy, and while I was in the Navy, I guess in my early to mid 20s, I developed a very strong interest in U.S. foreign policy, and especially in terms of the wars we fought, and I wanted to pursue that, study that, and I was looking at possibly political science as a field of study, and then I looked at sociology, and the more I learned about sociology, the more I saw that it was a far richer field, far broader in knowledge and understanding than political science. And so I decided to pursue a graduate degree in sociology, and I went to Colorado State for all the wrong reasons. I wanted to go out there to ski. But it was a good school. Don't regret that. Got a master's degree there. My focus was war prevention. War's not a good thing. Not that all wars are unnecessary, but in general, if you can avoid a war, get it done without a war, that's all the better. And then I studied how governments create wars, including our wars, how our government creates our wars. And a main focus in this was a study of methods of manipulating perception. And this can be endless, literally endless. You can go on and on the methods which this is done, even though simple methods are used over and over and over again. Okay, so my objective in doing this is to open your eyes to see how the world really works, and to help you become open-minded and fair, all right? And a lot of people think automatic, oh yeah, I'm open-minded, I'm fair, I don't, but, they don't really see their underlying biases, right? They don't see how people, just automatically and unconsciously alter and distort information, right, to see if they want to see it. So I want to teach bias, and I want to teach, dishonesty, If you ask a group of 10 people if they're honest, right, almost all of them will raise their hand, right? How many of you are liars? If you ask them if they're liars, no one will raise their hands. And they believe it. They think, I tell the truth, I'm honest, and they don't realize, that people innately lie. Okay, I want to help you become knowledgeable, right? Eclectic, which means that you're willing to take things that are true no matter what source, and that's an element of eliminating bias to make you better citizens. If you can have better understanding of how the world works, right, and you can be a better citizen, you can be more educated, informed, and when you go to the polls, possibly, right, not to be blind followers of what we're told and shown, right. What do I say here? Manipulated. Very, very, okay. So not to be manipulated, but I believe this is very hard, all right? It's hard to teach people not to be manipulated. Okay, now, what is sociology? Sociology is called, one thing that's called is the mother of all social sciences, and the reason why is because it encompasses a wide array of different subspecialties within social studies, right? It encompasses political science, economics, psychology, culture, understanding culture, education, religion, history, right? So this is part of the reason why I pursued sociology, because it provides a broader, more holistic, integrated understanding, right? Which is far richer. But at the same time, keeping all these in mind is going to be an issue of retention, especially for the average person who's just casually listening, right? How much they're going to retain. And I can tell you from my experience, from my classes, virtually none of the complex stuff is retained. People won't retain it, right? But my hope is that, out of all the people out there who may be listening, 1 out of 100,000, or maybe even just 1 out of 1,000,000, will take this stuff to heart, really try to, put a lot of effort and energy into trying to understand it and retain it. For the vast majority, it's going to be in one, out here, out the other. The instant I'm done with the lesson, it's gone. And they'll just revert back to whatever way they want to think. All right, so now let's talk about the term sociology. All right, first of all, we'll start with the suffix ology. Ology means, okay, we all know it means to study, right? And why do we study? We study to gain knowledge, right? And the old cliche is knowledge is power. Well, how is knowledge power? In fact, one of the early sociologists, Kant, explained this, right? He said knowledge is power because it allows us to explain, predict, and control. All right, so that's the essence of why knowledge is important, right? And it could be, something simple. It could be, understanding. I don't know. It can be understanding how to turn sand into silicon chips, right? It can be understanding. How to manage and control whole populations, how to manipulate a whole population into a war, for example. All right, so why study sociology? I think one of the reasons why people should study sociology is because, first of all, it'll help you better understand yourself. All right, and that's one of the things I want to try to accomplish here, is give you a better understanding of the nature of human cognition, the nature of how we think and why we think what we think, right? And then how those thoughts determine our actions. Okay, we'll get to more of this, especially. Let's see here. What do I want to get to? Oh yeah, we'll get to this in this lesson. This lesson number 1, but probably the third lesson. All right, we'll get to it. So the better we understand ourselves, the better we can control our lives, the better we can avoid being influenced and persuaded and manipulated. People think, oh, I'm never manipulated. Well, manipulation occurs without you knowing. That's why it's effective. No one knows when they're manipulated, and that's why it works. Because if you're influenced and if you're led to believe something, right? Are you in control of your life? Everyone thinks I am in control of my life. But if you're led to believe something, right, you're being controlled, right? And if you're controlled, are you really free? I mean, everyone thinks, we live in America. We live in a free society. We're free. We can do whatever we want. Well, there's always limits to that, right? There's laws and so forth. But sometimes those laws are good. They limit your freedom, but they can allow you to be more free. For example, you have speed limits, right? You're not free to drive as fast as you want, but at the same time, you're more free of worry of being injured by someone who's like driving out of control fast, right? There's laws against murder, for example, so you're not free to commit murder, but at the same time, you're more free from fear that someone's going to murder you, right? All right. So, anyways, just a little off to the side now. All right, so I want to open, another thing I want to do in sociology is open your eyes to the social forces that affect your lives, right? So what is a social force? A social force is anything that can influence individual and collective action, all right? And what I want to do is kind of show you a simplified diagram of a number of social forces we're exposed to, all right? And to explain this diagram, you see all these around here are social forces. Okay, so each of these in orange are social forces, all right? And social forces can influence you, can affect you, can alter what you do, all right? But how they alter what you do, right, is through altering your perceptions, influencing your perceptions. And I have this at the center because, well, one, the individual person is really the target of influence, right? And two, you're at the center of your own universe, right? Your perceptions, including beliefs and opinions, right, is your universe. It's your cognitive reality. It's what you know to be real, right? As far as you know it. And now this, whatever cognitive reality that's in your head, influences actions or inaction, all right? And if social forces can influence a large number of people, it can influence collective action or inaction, and if it can do so, it can gain power, okay? And like we said, if you have knowledge of how to do that, we said knowledge is power, right? Where is it? Okay, knowledge is power right there. Let's see here. So knowledge is power. And I'll make that. Okay. All right, so each of these, government is a social force. It can have influence on you. I'll just go through some very simple examples. I mean, you may have interacted with the government today. For example, let's say you're driving along and, well, first of all, you're following the speed limits, which is government, imposed. And then maybe you got a traffic violation, you got a ticket pulled over by a cop, right? It's tax time of year, so you have to pay your taxes. You're influenced by the government, okay, things like that, right? Real simple. Influenced by media, right? Maybe you looked at your cell phone today, maybe you watch TV, right? Picked up a newspaper or whatever, right? You're influenced by the information there. Entertainment, people there's all sorts of outlets for entertainment, from your cell phone again to movie theaters to computer, internet, whatever, right? Commerce, marketing, we're just inundated with exposure to commercials and advertising of any sort. You watch YouTube, for example, and there's all sorts of advertising on it. You go to any website, there's advertising there. And it's all for a purpose. They're trying to sell you a product, right? And the fact that they do it tells you that it works and it makes money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. Advertising is a huge industry, many multi-billion-dollar industry. Social media, right? All the different forms. What are the different forms of social media? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so forth, right? Sometimes that's today that's involved in our government, right? Some people just incessantly use Twitter, for example, in our government. Social reality, what everyone is saying, right? It has mass momentum because everyone is saying it, right? It can be like a wave created, right? No facts are needed in this. All right, we'll explain this again. So this can be totally factless, right? Totally baseless, yet it will dominate perceptions, and it always does. Another term for social reality is cell phone reality. People go into their cell phones, seeing what blurb is being passed, and that defining the total or their perception on things. Culture influences us. Culture influences what is normal, our norms, the way we see things. Education can influence us, right? It's a social force. Your friends, cliques can influence. It can have impact upon you. The physical world, for example, let's say you're let's say you're preoccupied and you're crossing the street, and because you're preoccupied, you don't pay attention, you don't look what traffic is coming, and you get run over by a truck. Well, that's going to affect your physical world, right? So that can affect you. Your job definitely affects you, whether you have a job or not, and the nature of your job, right? And that's impacted by the economy, for example, right? Maybe government policies can affect that, right? It's affected by other people. The big factor is not so much what you're doing, right? It's the people you're involved with. It could be your boss. You have a good or bad boss, right? It could be coworkers. Coworkers, are good or bad. A lot of coworkers can be mean and nasty, and can be, backstabbing and jealous and so forth. And changing technology influences jobs, right? As jobs advance, well, some jobs go out. They're not needed anymore. For example, they're replaced by robots or computers or whatever. And the two key factors that change jobs, changing technology creates new jobs, right? There's new opportunities, right? But also another factor is trade, right? How jobs can come and go due to the government policies on trade. Okay, now the key thing is each of these affect you. And how do they affect you? They affect your perceptions, right? Your cognitive reality, right? And then to the extent they affect them, they can affect your actions or inactions. If it can affect a lot of people, it affects collective action. And if you can effectively control the perceptions of a lot of people affecting their actions or inactions, that gives you power, right? And there's knowledge of how to do this. So knowledge is power. Here's an example. Let me give you some real simple examples. This is just an introductory lesson, so I'll keep these real simple. Okay, so first one I'll give you is this: government. So we said here that the government can influence you, right? There's many ways it can, right? Here's just one out of countless ways. Again, this comes from military examples and is based again, perhaps I'm a little biased as far as the examples I'll give you, because my interest was heavily weighed toward military. So this is an example how the public can be manipulated. The public can be manipulated to wars, but this is not so much a war. This is more simple. This is how the public is manipulated for good or bad. I'm not gonna make a judgment here. Whether it's right in a big picture or wrong, but how the public can be manipulated into limited military action, a short intervention or short invasion, for example, right? Examples could be, like our invasion in Panama, the short action there, our invasion in Grenada, right? Limited actions like our initiation of action against in the Balkans, in Croatia, for example, in Bosnia. Right, it's how we sell these policies. Right, it could be any other policy. It could be a policy, let's say, concerning our stance on some policy in Israel, for example. Anyways, you use the government can use the media to spread information. Right, so in a sense, it can play the media, get them to whatever by leaks and releases. So here's an example. Let's say our government deems it necessary. This is going to be the president's administration, because they're the one with executive power, right? They have the ones with the greatest control over foreign policy, right? And they can, according to the Constitution, they can. The president is the commander-in-chief, and he can apply military force for short duration things that are not really big, right? For big things, you need either a declaration of war or a congressional resolution. You need congressional support for it. But for more, I guess, lower level, shorter duration, more urgent things, the president has the leeway to act with military force. Okay, so let's say this is D-Day, the day that the president administration wants to apply military force. Now, they can't just go and, insert troops without preparing the public, right? If they do that, there's going to be a big backlash of fear, anxiety, right? There's going to be a lot of resistance because they don't know what it's all about. It's going to create, all sorts of concern, right? And it can make the whole operation problematic. So this is a typical pattern of what can be done, and I've seen this done when we invaded Grenada, when we went into Panama, and right before we started bombing in in the Balkans, Bosnia, and so forth, right? So that it's a 4-day cycle, and here is a scale of fear and anxiety. You have 0 down here, right? Here's 0. Here you have 100%. Okay, as much as you can get, right? Now, I start off just a normal day, and everyone has a little bit of fear and anxiety, anxious about this or that, right? I mean, they got some concerns about work, they got concerns about maybe finances, they got concerns about their kids, or who knows what, right? Or, relationships, whatever. And some amount of anxiety is good, right? Because that anxiety motivates us, it impels us. It drives us. So this is, not bad. You need some amount. If you didn't have it, right, you'd be pretty much a couch potato, right? But now what happens is on this day, D4, someone within the administration, a trusted official, who goes anonymous, right? It could be someone key. It could be someone like the Secretary of Defense or even Secretary of State, right? Or it could be someone like Chief of Staff, whatever, right? They leak to the press that we may invade this country. We're going to invade so-and-so country. We're going to invade Panama, right, for example, or Grenada, right? Now, the press gets a hold of it in D-4, right? Let's say newspapers, right? You call a newspaper, you call the Washington Post, whatever, right? They run the story the very next day. First thing in the morning, boom, headlines, right? We're going to invade Panama, right? Right, now, and this is passed in the news. This is passed on the network news, the TV news, right? And usually it's passed by reporters who have a lot of urgency and concern about this in their voice, right? They're not sure, what this means and what's going to happen, what are the consequences, so forth. And a lot of this will be debated, and they'll often, pull experts, some retired general, from the Air Force or Army or some admiral, right? And they'll have them as an expert witness, okay? And they'll just, they'll be throwing out, random hypotheses, whatever. And it's all done in a way which builds a lot of anxiety and tension, right? So the intention level goes way up for people who are paying attention, right? It's like, what's going on? What does this mean? Could it be backlash? Could this result in, backlash towards the United States? Could it increase terrorism? Could it, put us at threat, right? So there would be a lot of resistance at this point, right? So you get initial exposure, right? But then right away on the same day, right, you have a government official, right, a top government official come across. Could even be the president say, nope. There's no basis to those rumors. They're unsubstantiated, right? Right? I don't know how this got out, but it's totally, there's nothing to it. So then all that anxiety drops, right? I have it dropping here, maybe not as low as the initial, maybe it's still a little bit elevated because people are unsure, right? And then one day before, so that's D-2, right? On D-1, right, one day before D-Day, the president, for example, may come across on a national press conference or whatever, right, and say something equivocal, right, which kind of sounds like, wait, does that mean we are gonna send in troops, or does that mean we're not, right? So it raises the anxiety level a little bit, right? But not as high as this. It's already kind of, you get it out of your system, right? All this fear is like, it's almost a catharsis, right? And then on D-Day, when you want to insert troops, we insert troops, right? They fly into helicopters, right? Have landing craft go in, whatever it is, And shortly after the operation start, the president, there would be an interruption in programming, right? This is an interruption to, of our normal programming for an important statement by the president, right? And then you have the president, he'll be in his Oval Office, sitting behind his desk, right? And he'll start off, my fellow Americans, right, blah, blah, blah. And then what he'll do is he'll address these things. What we're doing, right? Why we're doing it, the reasons why we're doing it. He'll list a number of reasons. What the objectives are, right? What are the potential costs, right? So this is why. What are the benefits? What are the costs? What are the potential risks? How long it will take? So he'll lay it all out, right, in a calm, logical fashion, and that helps reduce anxiety. It gives us, because what is the biggest element of fear? The unknown, uncertainty, right? So, in explaining it, that helps reduce anxiety. But in the end, the anxiety levels are much lower, even though it's higher, maybe higher than normal, but it's much lower than they would be if we just inserted troops one day, right? And there'd be a backlash, like, what the hell? Why are you doing this? So this increases acceptance. All right, so put this here. Increases acceptance, right? There's less resistance. So the overall idea of this method is to create public expectations, right? If you create public expectations, that increases acceptance, right? Or it prevents an excessive buildup of fear and anxiety in the public, right? You obtain a catharsis of anxiety and fear. So that anxiety and fear is already played out already. It's out of your system, right? You jack it up, you take it down, you jack it up again a little bit, right? And then by the time you get to this, you're kind of like sick of it. Like, all right, fine, just go in. You prevent a public opposition which facilitates acceptance. All right, so that's just a simple method. We're going to talk about methods used to get into larger wars further on here. All right, so this is just a simple case, right, for a minor military intervention. All right, so the media, all right, how does the media influence you? Well, the media, a key way that the media can influence you is simply controlling what you're exposed to, right? A lot of the information that's presented, for example, in European news, right, is not presented in U.S. news agencies, right? So they can control what information you're exposed to, and if you can control the information you're exposed to, that controls the way you see things, right? It can control what stories are made to be deemed important, right? Where your attention is drawn to, where you're focused upon, and oftentimes what is ignored is even more important than what you're exposed to. It determines what stories to bring to your attention, what is covered, what is not covered, determines what information in those stories that they decide to cover is presented in each story and what is not presented, right? This controls the picture that is formed. They can add spin or bias, right? They can twist and distort to support their agenda. Classic example is Fox News. Boy, they're like shameless in the way they twist and distort things on a one-sided way. Make a totally one-sided presentation, or they can use a method called the two-sided method. Now, the two-sided method is a means, a more effective means of destroying the other argument. And you could start from any side of the argument and do the same thing and effectively win the argument. And the idea is this. In the two-sided method, first you come across as being fair and reasonable, right? And you present the argument you want to tear down, right? But you set it up as a straw man. And you set it up, going through this argument, this argument they're saying, this point, right? And you go through it as like it's reasonable, but you're really setting it up to tear it down. As soon as you go through, let's say, 4 or 5 points, let's say that you have for that side of the argument, right, and you do it in a way like you're supporting them, then you one by one you cut them down. Each point you cut down. And the effect is, right, when you get to the end, you think, well, boy, that argument is totally baseless. And the thing about it is, you can do that from either side, and it'll work. You can hype stories with fear and dread, right? For example, I remember during the build-up to the Iraq invasion war, how sickened I was by the U.S. media, right? They weren't asking the real hard questions. They weren't asking whether or not there was really weapons of mass destruction. They weren't asking, whether or not, if in fact Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which he didn't. Would he use them against the U.S.? Would he give them to terrorists, especially terrorist groups like the religious fundamental radicals who would first use them against him to establish their caliphate, which was their number one goal, right? They weren't asking these questions, right? And instead, they're just building up fear. They're hyping up these stories, right, of weapons of mass destruction, and it made me sick. And that's, across the board, not just Fox News. That was like CNN too. That was all the major network news: ABC, CBS, NBC, right? I remember just going channel to channel, just like sickened by this, thinking, "Oh God, here comes another war." They can distort information. They can present false information. And when they present false information, they don't retract it. They never retract it. You look at Fox News, for example. When information is falsely present, right, do they go back and retract it, right, and correct it? No, they just move on to the next thing. They're constantly on the move, right? And one of the ways this is done is they bring in these experts, right? And they hypothesize all these, scenarios. Much of them, which never play out. All right. So one thing the media can do is plant images and ideas in your head. Entertainment is another great means of planting ideas in your head, right? And people probably won't admit to the extent that they can be influenced by what is being passed, right? As far as how they perceive things, things from history, right? There's for example a number of sources of history, right? People learn history from school. People learn history from like history programs, right? History Channel, whatever, right? People learn history from little 1 minute blurbs in the news media, right? Okay, in this day in history, this so happened, right? Or they can learn history from movies. Now, of those, which really sticks, which is really powerful? I mean, do you really remember much of history from high school? All right, most people can't state much of anything from their history that are in high school, all right? The little blurbs in the media, don't have much of an effect, right? What really sticks, what's really powerful, is the history passed in movies, right? Now, why is that? Right. Well, key reason why is because movies dramatize it. They make it real. They have real characters you get invested in. They have real, consequences. They have, people in dire situations, what you're hoping for, right? You're rooting for them, or you have an enemy that you hate, right? And then you have conflict and so forth, right? And it draws in your emotions, right? And it's very simple to understand, and follow. And, the whole emotional experience with sound and vision, with drama, right? And real people, right? Makes it real. It sticks more, right? But is it good history or is it crap history, right? So, one of the things they can do is they can portray who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. Well, if they're U.S., they're usually the hero, right? It could say who's the bad guys, who are evil, devious, sneaky, murderous villains, right? And it's whoever they want to portray as the enemy in the public mind, whoever they want to build up in the mind. And you see a lot of Russians, for example, as like being like sneaky, devious people, right? In not just like movies, but in television series and so forth, right? Okay. Now, Hollywood can make lies, right? Hollywood history is garbage history. It's trash history. It's so inaccurate. It's so biased in presenting facts, right? And much of it's made up. Vast majority of American snipers made up. Vast majority of Argos made up, right? Pearl Harbor, does that show the whole picture? Not by a long shot. It's ridiculous. Even though, a certain actor within it says, oh, this is the definitive work on Pearl Harbor. It's a joke, right? So you can paint a lie by selecting what facts to show, what facts you don't show, right? And what is often more important is the facts not shown than the facts that are shown. You can, with Hollywood history, you can completely make up stuff, right? Now, with like history, from a history course, right, it's harder to make up stuff, right? Because things can be, researched and fact-checked and so forth, right? I mean, certain things are kind of made up, for example, because there's so much popular support for us. For example, the notion that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves, right? I mean, that dominates in our history, right? But cases like that where it's fabricated, there's no factual basis for, are few and far between, right? But in Hollywood history, they completely make up stuff. It's totally, made up. And these guys aren't studious academic historians, right? They're just writing a script, right? It's a Hollywood script, but the thing about it is Hollywood history is taken as history, right? It is a most powerful history as far as the public is concerned. So the purpose can be to pass lies and propaganda, to manipulate public belief and attitudes, to make heroes. It can be even to be, support a war, to get people to have public backing for a war. And one of the best ways of doing that is making heroes. Now, people will deny that this will work on them, right? Because, let's say, I won't, I'm too smart for that. It can't fool me, right? But it can have a profound effect, right? Here's another way. Here's another minor way that the entertainment industry can have an effect upon people. It can make copycats, right? So, entertainment, is exposes people to new things, right? It can be trendsetters in fashion, in style of talk, like a new expression, or manners of speech or manners of behavior, right? And it can even influence crime. I mean, this is, you can say this is a far lesser, especially the worst crimes are far lesser. I mean, I can watch, as many movies, as I want to, which involve murder and crime and so forth, and I'm not going to go out and commit murder. But the point is, right, even though the vast majority of people are not influenced like that, right, there's always people who it can have influence on. There's always people more susceptible in whatever situation, whatever background, whatever, psychological makeup the person is, right? And whatever their desires are. For example, I'll give you just a few examples. There was a TV show a long time ago starring George Kennedy called The Blue Knight, where he's playing a beat cop. And there was an episode in which an armored car was robbed by having two cars come up. One was a van, comes up in front of it. Another car behind. So they jam him in, so he can't move. Right? It's parked in front of a bank, and then they open the doors of the van in front, right? And it exposes a big anti-tank gun, an anti-armor gun, right? And gets the guys to open up the armored car, and they rob it, right? Well, not too long after that actually happened. They did that, and it was inspired by, they got an example. They had access to a big 20 millimeter cannon, right? And that was conducted, right? So it can give inspiration. Here's just another example: the Columbine shooters, right? They were heavily influenced by the movie Natural Born Killers. They always talked about, let's go NBK, right? Influenced by the Basketball Diaries. There's a dream sequence where a guy goes in a long black trench coat, right? Like they wore, and then with a shotgun and started blowing away people. Heather's the same thing. There's a guy in a long black trench coat goes in and blows away people, and they're inspired by these movies, right? And it's interesting that NBK, what's kind of almost funny was Natural Born Killers was a movie by Oliver Stone in which he's mocking as a parody, that Hollywood can have an influence upon, the public as far as, getting them to commit violent crime, right? And this is just a rare case, get you to commit the most extreme violent crime, which is murder, right? And so he made this movie to be like, kind of far-fetched and extreme, almost comic bookish, right? But it had influenced these kids. It influenced another couple who went on a killing spree inspired by this movie, right? Now, once again, that's a rare case, right? But for rare people with whatever background or circumstances, it can be just enough to inspire them. The Hollywood heist, for example, this Hollywood heist was the Hollywood bank robbers, right? They watched over and over again the movie Heat. So people can get inspiration, and they get copycats. All right, okay, can change mores, which are custom, so forth, right? Next I want to talk about is social media, social networks, and social reality, all right? Social reality, I'll focus on that, is basically what everyone is saying. And it is very powerful, although people, probably may not, see that, the power it's having, but it has a huge impact upon what is perceived, right? The mere fact that everyone is saying it, people take it as being truth, credible, right? Well, everyone's saying it. Not everyone can be wrong, right? And its power is derived from the power of social influence. Social influence is huge, right? Social influence is one of the greatest powers, right? For good or bad, right? For example, for good, let's take an example of alcoholics. Well, an organization that uses the positive benefits of social influence is Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You hold each other accountable, right? You go to these meetings, right? And it can have a big impact, and the power of it is based upon social influence, on mutual support. Social reality is usually the most powerful influence upon perceptions, right? It appears organic, like it's just natural, that, everyone's just kind of saying this, right? But waves of social reality, momentum shifts, can be created and controlled by formal groups. They can set these in motion, almost as easy as like starting a wave in a stadium, getting people to stand up and lift their arms, right? And once it gets going, right, it spreads and then becomes self-sustaining. Cell phones are a big part of this. They make social reality widespread. Pretty much everyone has a cell phone. They make it instantaneous. You get it, boom, you get a notice, right? A little sound goes off. You pick up your phone to check it out, right? It's powerful, right? It's a dominant reality, right? And it spreads like a chain reaction. So, you can get this started, right? And one person spreads it to two. Those people spread it to two, right? Each one spreads it to two. And within within minutes, it's a huge number of people. Okay, so it spreads fast, right? And it doesn't even have to spread like that. One person can spread this to everyone. Okay, so though social reality is the most dominant reality, right? It needs no real basis in fact, right? In fact, oftentimes social reality is used to attack facts that are presented, all right? And let's say, for example, I present a historical event, right? And I back it up with like 200 to 300 facts. The moment I'm done, that very instant I'm done with the presentation, if you ask people, right, if I present it to a whole class, and I've done this, so many times, and there's never been any variation, right? If I present it to a whole class, right, usually I get either one person remembering one thing or the whole class remembering nothing, right? And you say, no, that's not possible. No, that is not just possible. That happens all the time, right? And if I give it to a person one-on-one, when you give it to a person one-on-one, there's more direct social interaction, so it's more potent, more powerful. You have greater effect, right? But even then, one-on-one, where you're actively engaging the person, questioning them, asking them, this and that, right? What's their opinion on this and that, right? Trying to draw them in, right? And when you get personal interaction, it's far more potent. But even then, things remembered are between 0 and 7 facts. And that's out of like 200 or 300, right? 7, the very maximum, and it's rare that people get 7. Typically, 3 is about average. People get like about 3, right? 1 is given one-on-one. You get cases where people remember 0. You're talking to them face to face, and they walk away with 0, right? So people take away, on average, about 3, and those 3 facts, right, are distorted, right? They're erroneous. They're bare bones, superficial, minimal, right? And that's it, right? But the thing about it is, the overall impression can still be strong, right? They're convinced, right? They don't remember any facts, right? But the overall impression, kind of but what is that overall impression? It's fuzzy, it's vague, it's nebulous, it's not based on any facts now, right? So that overall impression is highly subject to change, to distortion, to manipulation, to be blown away, right? That's forgotten quickly because it's not based on any known facts. So, in fact, facts are all forgotten immediately after they're presented. Now, this is based on, neurophysiology. You cannot deny this. To remember things, you have to grow dendrites, which are filaments that grow out, connect one neuron to another. Then you have to form synaptic junctions, right? And those synaptic junctions are formed easily. Strength of synaptic junctions are dependent upon, like, repetition, right? The amount of emotions involved. For example, if something is shocking, right, you may remember it for a long time, right? For example, you may remember where you were the day Kennedy was shot, or the day the space shuttle blew up, or this or that, right? I mean, I remember where I was exactly when I heard the space shuttle blew up, right? I was driving down the road in Newport, and I don't know exactly where I was, what street, I can't remember now. I was only in Newport for about 4 months, Newport, Rhode Island. But I remember clearly I was driving my car in Newport on a sunny day when I heard that. But those are rare things, right? So the fact that we can remember certain items, betrays the reality that the vast majority of things we do not retain, right? So it's based on neurophysiology. People will deny this, but if you test them in reality, and I've done this test upwards near 1,000 times, probably well over 900 times. I've done this, both person to person and in my classes, right? And you always get the exact same results. So this is undeniable. This is what's going to happen. Facts will not be remembered. People say, "Oh, I'm like a computer. I remember everything." No, you remember nothing. So social reality is the most real reality, though it needs no basis in facts or any real intelligent analysis, right? Virtually none of the facts are remembered immediately after presentation, but however, the fuzzy, vague overall impression may be strong. All right. Therefore, clever manipulators will wait a day or so. If they attack right away, it backfires. It blows back in their face, and people will say, "No, you're just liars. You're just trying to lie and deny." Right? So I've seen them try that day many times, and every time they try that day, it backfires, right? Now, does that mean they have to wait a long time? Well, usually, the Mark Antony method, when I was first exposed to the Mark Antony method, going on, close to 30 years now, 28 years or so, I pick up on things fast, and I analyze them, figure them out right away. I can see a method used once or so. It's shocking that people will have the same method used, hundreds and hundreds of times and never pick up on it. Like the Mark Antony method, I've seen it used hundreds and hundreds of times, and people don't pick up on it. But yeah, when I first started seeing it used from the early 1990s, right? Early 1990s through about mid-2000, like 2005, 2006, right? They always used no, actually longer than that, maybe like to 2008 or 9, right? They always used a 4-day lag time. So if I presented facts, right, on day 1, they would wait till day 5, right, to do a Mark Anthony counter shift, right? And it used 4 days every single time, right? That was like their cookbook formula, right? And it worked every time, right? But then I noticed they started experimenting and varying the time to 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. 1 day is all they need for the overall impression to fade and blow away like, a puff of smoke. All right. So 1 day later, they counterattack, and it works. No one remembers the facts. No one remembers the overall impression. It's all faded. Then they'll pass something in social reality, shift off the facts and onto the distorted lie. And without fail, it'll create a wave of social reality momentum. All right. So here's all the facts. All the facts are forgotten. Now, this picture, people say, "Oh, you're being mocking." I'm not. This is actually what happens, without fail, right? Now, this picture depicts a stage in cognitive development, right? Childhood development, called permanence, right? Up to a certain point. For example, if you have this child, you put them in this chair, put a little doll in front of them, they want to play with the doll. But if you put a screen in front of their face, they'll forget about that doll, okay? Right? Beyond a certain point, in development, however old it is, each kid differs a little bit. But let's say at 2 years old or 1 year old, you put the screen in front of their face, they still remember that the doll's behind them. That's permanence, okay? Now, people are going to joke and say, "Oh, this is unrealistic. This is, people aren't like this." You want to bet? You think the facts are going to remain? I've proven upwards of 1,000 times that the facts do not remain. The facts will be gone, right? And what's going to dominate? Social reality. Whatever is waved in front of your face repeatedly, right? And given mass social reinforcement, that dominates. That's in your face. That's what's going to be in your mind. Facts are gone. This doll, in this case, the doll's still back there, right? But in reality, that doll, as far as what you know of the facts, is gone. It's vaporized. There's nothing left of it, right? So what dominates? What's being passed? Facts are gone. Intelligent analysis, gone, right? So this is not far-fetched. This is what adult human cognition is when it comes to facts. It comes to social reality. So they'll pass something in social reality, shift focus off of the facts. Well, no one remembers the facts, right? But they'll shift focus away, right, to something else, onto some distortion or lie. And it will, without fail, create a wave of social momentum. It'll be passed, it'll be spread, it'll be reinforced, people repeating it, right? And this will then dominate perceptions. And there's no stopping this. Some examples of social reality counterswings to generate a wave of ridicule. So the idea is this. Usually they generate a wave of ridicule, mockery, or anger. It's always good for ridicule, mockery. These work because it's emotion-based. Anger is good because it's emotion-based, right? Emotions are powerful, and emotions are irrational, right? So it's not logical. Okay, so one thing they do is they'll pass a mocking joke. This dominates. Facts, facts mean nothing. Facts are forgotten, but a mocking joke will stick, right? A mocking joke will be salient. It'll be funny. You'll kind of remember it. It's simple, right? Everyone's passing it. Everyone's repeating it. One word reality, right? That sticks. Crazy. Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. Right? Yeah. What's your belief based upon? No facts. Bogus attack on a single vulnerable fact. So there may be a fact that's totally true, but yet, for the average person, they may see it's far-fetched. They'll jump all over that, even though it's totally true, right? Or they'll twist and distort what the messenger says. So they, if I present some information, they'll come up, first of all, what they attack is not all the facts. They don't touch all the facts. They'll twist and distort what you say and attack their own twisted distortions, right? And pass it off as you saying it. They'll pass false information. They'll come up with totally false stuff, and no one double checks it. No one checks the facts. They'll see doubt in some way. Usually this is ad hominem. In some way, they'll manufacture doubt. That's called ad hominem, right? Where you attack the credibility of the person, right? And there's countless ways of attacking credibility. Make him look crazy. Make him look like a liar, right? And you can play those games. Put words in your mouth and attack not what the person actually says, but what you say he says, which he didn't say at all. And then, in all cases, when you're doing these, they shift focus onto a straw man. So what a straw man is something that if people want to attack a person, they build up a straw man, which is not what this person said, right? But it's something that's easy to be shown to be wrong and false, all right? And then they attack it, knock it down, and then attribute it to that person, right? So they'll say he said something, right, which he didn't, which is so blatantly wrong and easy to attack, and everyone can see that, right? And they'll say, oh, he's crazy. Well, no one checks the fact that the person never said that. The straw man, the liar set up to knock down and discredit, has nothing to do with the facts and intelligent analysis, nor what the target person actually says. But it works because no one remembers the facts, right? You don't remember the facts. People will not remember the facts. Nor will they bother to check the facts. Nor will they bother to check what the target actually said, right? They'll just go with what's being passed. And that always happens. No one goes back and does their research. They'll just go, take what's being passed. Social reality is often called cell phone reality, which is often nothing more than silly, simple, baseless blurbs that you can make in one or two sentences, right? That totally displaces a whole body of hundreds of verifiable, documented facts, right? Which no one remembers, so it doesn't matter. Which have nothing to do with the immense body of facts and intelligent analysis, but it dominates people's realities. But it's easy to understand. But they're easy to understand, and if everyone's saying it, it is taken for real, right? That's a big part of salience, right? If it's easy, oh man, that sticks out in your head, right? You get some easy. It doesn't matter if it's totally made up and false. If it's easy to understand, right, and seem credible, then people will be passing it. All right, so here's social reality. We'll start here. Believed by the masses. So this is mass belief, right? It's mass belief is mass reinforcement. People are passing it. People are, it dominates perceptions. It's super salient. It stands out. Salient means to stand out, all right? Reason why it stands out because it gets social reinforcement. It's got repetition, right? Your brain's, unless there's repetition, it won't be remembered. It exploits powerful emotions. It uses humor and anger, right? Two big things are mockery, right? Aggressive humor and anger. Boy, those stick. Involves not just recent, right? That's another element of salience. How recent it is. All right. It's not just recent, but it's currently and continuing and ongoing, reinforced, repeated. It involves a mocking joke or aggressive humor, right? Aggressive humor is attacking the person, making fun of the person. It's simple, easy to understand, impacts on the broadest basis. So because it's so simple, it has the widest effect. If it's complicated, right? If you take something complicated, then a lot of people won't understand it. They'll be, what? And they'll just ignore it, toss it out, right? But if it's simple and people can get it, then it'll be retained and it'll have an effect. True facts and intelligent analysis, right, cannot possibly compete right? And the reason why they can't compete is because they're not remembered. A lot of people don't follow the intelligent analysis, right? And in any case, none of it's remembered, right? Thus, it has zero salience. It's always available instantaneously with just pick up your phone. By shifting focus, social reality actually destroys true facts and intelligence analysis by helping you push it out of mind, right? So not only these are they're forgotten as it is, right? So it's easy to manipulate, right? It's aligned with it's super salient if it's aligned with what people want to believe. If this is in line with what people want to believe, boom, they'll hold it up, right? They'll champion it. Facts, accuracy, truth, it all takes a back seat. It's easy to manipulate, always available and instantaneous, easy to promote via electronic social networks. If you establish a network, you create a social network, right? You can quickly pass the stuff along that network, all right? And it's facilitated by technology, by cell phones, right? Social reality shifts can be started like a wave. They're easy to start, so easy to manipulate. Once started, they propagate themselves, like a California wildfire, a drought-dried forest. But yeah, they propagate themselves. It's chain reaction, right? And everyone's spreading it, everyone's reinforcing it, It creates the reality of it, right? When there's no real basis, in fact, in intelligent analysis. But it's short and simple blurbs, right? Usually consists of like 1 or 2 sentences. And if everyone's adding their 1 or 2 cents, right, that's all it is, right? It appears credible because like everyone's saying it, right? And people think, yeah, see, everyone's saying it. And if that's what they want to believe, then they're like, victory, right? And what's it based upon? Nothing, right? Just idiot stuff. True facts and intelligent analysis are buried by social reality. True facts and intelligent analysis have zero salience, right? A day or two after the true facts and intelligent analysis are presented, right, they're gone. So here's salience, how much it stands out. Here's a bunch of different items. Well, here's social reality. It dominates. It is so powerful because everyone is saying it. It's being repeated. It's getting social reinforcement. It's simple, right? Here's the large body of facts intelligent analysis. I gave it a little bump here. It's not even that. There's like nothing there. Literally, there's like zero. In most cases, there's zero there. Facts, gone, right? So this is not proportional because this is like zero. This is like non-existent. Now, why is social reality so powerful and dominant in people's minds? Because of salience. Salience means to stand out. So what are some salience factors in social reality? One is social reinforcement. This is powerful. This gets it to stand out. This gets it to be kept in your mind. Repetition is repeated over and over again. It's a mocking joke and things that are funny, you remember. I'll give an example. I took accelerated or AP courses in high school, everything, right? Just because if you take an accelerated course, if you get a B, the same as an A, right? So it's easy to get an A average, right? By just getting a B or B minus, right? Which is not hard to do, right? And so you can scam the system. I graduated with over a 4.0, and I didn't really learn anything, right? I just knew that all I had to get was a B. So I took this course, accelerated U.S. history, right? You know what I remember from that course? Nothing, right? What I did remember are his funny jokes. I can, to this day, recall about 7, 8 of his funny jokes, right? Can I remember anything he taught in class? No. But I remember his funny jokes, right? They stick. And he had some pretty good ones. They're pretty funny. Emotions, anger, this sticks in your head. Dry, abstract facts, gone, right? Something that gets you angry, builds up hate, that sticks. Recent, right? All you got to do is wait a day and the overall impression's gone. Facts are gone the minute you stop giving the facts. No one remembers them. You don't have time and effort, repetition, to grow actual physical neural connections, right? So nothing sticks, right? But this is recent, it's ongoing, it's continuous, right? It's being repeated. Simple, easy to understand. It's not complex, abstract facts. This is simple. Boom, sticks. It's captured in 1 or 2 sentences. If it matches your desires, right? If it supports and facilitates what you want to believe, it's going to be salient. You're going to champion it. You're going to build it up in your head, right? And that's what people do. They'll gravitate to the thing that helps them believe what they want to believe. And this is super powerful. It's one of the elements of cognition is motivation, right? Now, final judgment on social reality. It doesn't matter. It will not matter how many times I teach it, right? How many times people are shown how baseless, distorted, ridiculously simple, and manipulated social reality is. They'll go back to it like a knee-jerk reaction. I swear, people go back to it over and over again. You just get done teaching it, and people will go to their phone and say, "What are people saying about it?" Right? They won't remember any of the actual, factual basis for it. They'll just go, "What are people saying about what he said?" And that will define their beliefs on it. So they'll go back to like a knee-jerk reaction, like an uncontrollable itch they just have to scratch. They'll go back to their phones, like a dog going back to its vomit. Like something you just can't control. You have like you're a kleptomaniac. You just have to steal or something like that. You just can't control it. Like something they just can't learn. All right. So those are elements of social forces. I went through government. I just covered social reality. I covered social reality pretty in depth, right? But it's baseless, right? So why are you at the center here? Well, because your perceptions are the center of your universe. What your universe is, what your reality is your cognitive reality, right? The reality that's in your head. That's the only reality people know. People think, "Oh, I know reality." No, you just know the reality in your head. You always do, and that's it, because that's where knowing is, all right? Now, hopefully that's pretty close to what any semblance of reality is, but not necessarily. Then another reason why is because you're the target of influence. So the target of influence is every individual. You can say they can target a group or something like that, right? But ultimately, they're targeting person by person, exposing them to things that get in their heads, right, and influence their beliefs. Are your perceptions absolutely the way reality is? A lot of people think that, right? I've talked to a lot of people that, you say, if it's not what you see, it's not. Is it not real? They're like, yeah, it's not real, right? Or a lot of people have that simple understanding where what they perceive is real for sure, absolutely, and if it's not what they perceive, then it's not real. But is it really what's real, or is it entirely a construction in your brain? Are your perceptions really reality, or are they entirely a construction in your brain, hopefully close to reality, but actually extremely limited by things like limited information, distorted salience we talked about, by motivation distortions, limited analytical ability? People, don't have the analytical ability they think they have, right? Manipulation of perceptions. Now, which social force is the biggest, right? I don't know. I think a big one emerging is social reality. This is powerful, right? Based on the new technology, social reality is big, right? And I think it's increasing. All right. So another advantage of sociology, we said advantages are to get self-enlightenment, right? To understand social forces. So self-enlightenment is one. Understand social forces is another. And I say another one is to better make you better able to assess the effectiveness of policies, right? Policies are plans of actions of an organization. Okay, it could be a group, or it could be a company, or it could be the government, right? So policy is a collective course of action directed by plans and rules, controlled by leaders in that group. All right. Now, example is U.S. foreign policy, right? Who controls foreign policy in the U.S., right? What does the Constitution say? The Constitution, first of all, creates a clear division between state power and federal power, right? And as far as foreign policy, it's entirely within the federal domain, right? No state can have an individual foreign policy. So California can't go off and make a separate treaty with whoever, okay? Nor can like Ohio, right? Foreign policies on the federal level. Now, who in the federal level? There's three branches. There's federal, there's a legislative and judicial, right? Well, primary foreign policy is given to the executive. So the executive branch has the vast majority of foreign policy. All right. Now, formally, the legislative has, like the judicial has no foreign policy whatsoever, really, right? Unless it involves a specific case. For example, let's say with a foreign national, maybe, I don't know. That's a hypothetical thing, right? But as far as the legislative branch, right, they have very limited foreign policy. They can, for example, they have to ratify appointments, right? And those appointments can be like ambassadors and so forth, right? They also have to ratify treaties, right? And that's a 2/3 vote ratification. So the executive branch, the president, the administration can make a treaty, for example, with either United Nations, or with another country, and that treaty has to be ratified by the Senate, not the full Congress. It's a Senate. Same with appointments. Appointments are ratified by the Senate, Senate alone, not the House. And that's about it as far as formal. Informally, they can make laws that could have impact upon trade, for example, right? They can embargo things, can apply sanctions, all right? So that's some informal things, right? But as far as the quick maneuver, the more, I want to say, more adept control of foreign policy is directly in the hands of the executive. The executive has a vast majority of foreign policy, right? Executive can create wars, right? You can think, no, it's the legislative that has control over wars, because they can they're given the power to declare war. The executive doesn't have that power, right? Well, there's also congressional resolutions, which can be the legal basis for the war. And time again, it's been shown that the executive can manipulate Congress into a congressional resolution. We'll go over a couple cases, right? Which lead to war, right? So long as you get just a congressional resolution, right? I'll explain how that's done. All right, so all right, do policies control collective action? Well, you betcha, right? All right. Once you have a national policy, it can control collective action. Controls action on a national level. Can it have big effects? Absolutely. Is there power and ability to control policy? Absolutely, right? Now, one example of policy is the Bush administration's policy on invading Iraq, the Iraq invasion war, right? Was the purpose of that war to fight terrorism? Well, that's a stated purpose, right? It was to prevent WMD and prevent Saddam from giving it to terrorists who are going to use it against us, or he may use a WMD against us ourselves, right? And we don't want to have a smoking cloud a mushroom cloud is a smoking gun, right? Right, because it's too late by then. Right, and mushroom cloud being basically the evidence that a nuclear weapon has gone off. Was Iraq a terrorist threat? Is that what Richard Clark, the anti-terrorist czar, and all the intelligence agencies were saying at the time, that Iraq was a direct terrorist threat to the United States at that time? Right? Did Iraq do 9/11? Was Iraq even connected to Al Qaeda? Did it have WMD? Right? Or did this war actually cause a distinct and significant, almost quantum increase in terrorist operations, right? Did it spread terrorist motivation throughout the world, right? And did it lead to the formation of ISIS, right? Now, did it destabilize the Middle East? Did it kill a lot of people? Did it destroy a country, destroy their economy, unleash sectarian war, right? Did it unleash an insurgency war? Did it exponentially increase terrorism? Did it create ISIS? Now, was all this totally unforeseen and unexpected? Was this just like an unfortunate mistake, right? Or was it totally predictable? Was it predicted in the past, right? Was this perfectly predictable, and was it predicted in the past? I predicted all of this during the first Gulf War. The short thing, 1990-91, right? The 4-day war, right? You know, way back then, I was a true believer, right? Saddam went into Kuwait, and I'm like, damn, right? You know, we can't allow this to happen, right? And I was a true believer back then. However, looking back, I was just a simple person, even though I was intelligent, right? Understanding military things, right? As far as the big picture, I was pretty simple still, right? Seeing, you know, overall what's going on. So, as a true believer, I wrote a strategy for that war. How to fight that war in the quickest, cleanest, most effective way, right? With the least residual bad effects, right? Now, I was smart enough for this. You know, I was very smart as far as understanding this stuff, right? Not understanding the full big picture, right? Was that strategy highly effective? Absolutely, right? But I also wrote how not to fight that war, right? And here's some of the brief elements I wrote, how not to fight the war, which is exactly what the Bush administration did. So I write back then, right, don't do this because this is what's going to happen, and they go and do this, right? How not to fight it. Don't invade the country. It's going to create, you know, it's just obvious. It's like not rocket science. It's going to create hate for foreign military occupation, right? With all the killing, destruction, suffering. And another thing is, you occupy a country, right? If you take down a country, you're going to have to set up shop as the temporary government in charge, right? You lose the initiative, right? You lose. You allow the enemy to reconstitute. You fall back on a static defense, in which you become a sitting, predictable target. All right. Now, through this foreign military occupation, you're obviously going to incite xenophobia, fear and hatred of foreigners. You're going to increase nationalistic, religious fervor. If someone invaded us, right, people are going to wave the flag. When 9/11 happened, we were attacked, right? Flags were flying from cars left and right. People, you know, driving down the street with their American flags flying from the cars, right? Why? People rally around the flag. People rally around the leader when they feel threatened. And if you invade a country, that's going to excite it even more. If someone invaded us, right, some other country, you know, hypothetically, people are going to get severely pissed off, and they're going to get nationalistic. It's going to radicalize people. It's going to militarize them. All these were obvious, right? And that's going to make for more terrorists like ISIS. That's going to make for more conflict, right? More war. It's going to make for more radicals, right? And more vicious people, right? It's going to severely piss people off. All right. Now, you incite an insurgent war. You occupy a country. There's going to be an insurgency, an underground guerrilla movement at the start, right? That can expand. And that's going to further fuel it. Now, looking back, it was easy to see that if we go into Iraq, it's going to be an urban guerrilla war. That's what we're going to have, right? It's going to be nasty, bloody. It's going to be door-to-door, kicking in doors, right? It's going to be, bringing in artillery support, air support, right? Bringing in tanks, and there's going to be a lot more destruction, all right? And given the fact that it's happening in an urban area, well, you know that there's going to be collateral damage. People, the average citizens, civilians, innocent people are going to be victims. It can be totally, unintentional, right? But still, it's going to happen, and that's just going to fuel the fire, right? And as a result of our invasion, over 123,000 civilians have been killed. Right? And that's going to just fuel more xenophobia, more nationalistic and religious fury, right? It's going to further radicalize people. It's going to further militarize them. All right. Now, the insurgent war is going to increase consumption, demand for weapons. Insurgent war is going to create great destruction, which requires reconstruction. All right. Now, if you take out Saddam, this is another thing I said way back then. You take out Saddam, you're going to have chaos. Right. Don't take out Saddam. Right. You take out Saddam, you're going to have a power vacuum. And if you look at the situation back then, even when we went in, right, you got three dominant groups. You have Sunni, Shia, and Kurds, right? You take out the overall controlling leadership, right? These go at each other's throats. You're going to have sectarian war. You're going to have civil war, right? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be bloody. They're going to be going at each other, right? And so you have two wars. You have insurgency war. They're fighting us, and they're fighting each other, right? And all this is creating destruction. All this is creating more hate, right? All this is spiraling things out of control. Civil society's gone, right? You get chaos, ignited sectarian civil war, right? And you take out Saddam, you destabilize the region, right? Iraq is weakened, right? What was the key balance of power back then? The key balance of power was Iraq versus Iran, right, in the Middle East. And what's happening today, right? Iran has gained a significant influence in the Shia majority Iraq now, right? And there's a potential of, lining up a Syria, Iraq, Iran, Shia bloc, right? Well, is that in the interest of, let's say, Saudi Arabia, right? Is that going to help their strategic defensive situation or be a threat to them, right? And is that going to increase what they do, right? Is that just going to pour gasoline on the fire over there? All right. So with all this, you have increased weapons consumption, increased weapons demand. You have great destruction requiring reconstruction. All this requires increased weapons sales, right? They need to buy more weapons, right? They need to reconstruct. This is increasing debt, right? Now, how do they pay for debt in oil-producing areas where the economy is highly dependent upon oil production? For example, in Iraq, 60% of their economy was oil production, right? Now, you take out that 60%, for example, right? What happens to the rest? It crumbles. Right, so their economy was heavily dependent upon oil. What do they do to finance their debt? Well, they sell more oil. What happens to oil prices? Oil prices fall, right? So I'll explain it much better. I'm not really getting into the details of it, right? But essentially, as an overall statement, you can say that conflict, right, is a means of gaining indirect control of oil prices. So even if you lose control of oil prices, right, like we did in 1971, essentially, right? When the Texas Railroad Commission set pro rationing at 100% production capacity, right? We lost our role as monitors of spare production, right? That went to OPEC, right? So essentially, they gained control of the price, and the ability to control price is the essence of monopoly power, right? So they control price, right? How do you regain control of price? This is a means of indirectly regaining control of price. It's only one of the many economic benefits, though. So what happens here? What happened when we created more terrorists, right? We created groups like ISIS, right? Make them more radical. Well, you radicalize the moderates, right? For one is, the government itself was in no favor for these religious radicals, extremists, fundamentalists, right? They were hunting them down. The 2006 Senate Intelligence Report said they were hunting them down. Why? Because they posed a threat to the Iraqi government, right? They wanted to take down the government because the number one goal was not attack the U.S. The number one goal was to set up a caliphate over there, set up the religious state, right? To do that, they have to take down the local government, right? Like Iraq, like Syria, right? So you radicalize moderates, right? Moderate clerics, you radicalize them. You radicalize the military, right? You throw them together, the radicals and the military, for example, in same camps like Camp Bucca, right? They joined forces there, right? Whether they really believe each other, whether they come closer to each other, right? Or whether they decide to use each other, whatever, right? 24 of the 25 top leaders of ISIS came from Camp Bucca, right? Including Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, right? So the military, you radicalize the military, but then the military militarizes the radicals. They teach them military tactics, right? Weapons use and weapons tactics, combat tactics. And this whole conflict, had a great increase in homegrown terrorists, right? Spread terrorism worldwide, right? Increased motivation for people, Muslims around the world, to get pissed off and become terrorists, right? Join Al Qaeda, right? Increased terrorist threat attacks throughout the world, right? For example, the bus bombing in London was motivated by Muslims being pissed off that Britain supported the invasion of Iraq, right? The attack in Spain, same thing. They're pissed off because Spain provided forces for the invasion of Iraq. All right, so all this was predictable. Making that huge mess over there was all predictable. All right, so I'm going to briefly get into another example of, I'll probably have to do this again because I'm kind of doing this ragged. Another example of how the government can manipulate the whole population and Congress is how the Bush administration manipulated the entire, well, not the entire Congress, but overall Congress and the population into supporting the Iraq invasion war, right? So I'll explain it through all these facts that were conducted, right? And then I guess I'll stop after that, all right? And then right, so what I'll do is I'll just provide a brief outline, all right, to give you an idea, overall idea, so you have in your mind the whole pattern. Then I'll give you all the specific details, right, step by step. All right, so here's kind of the overall idea. Here's the timeline. This is 9/11 of 2001. This is when the Al Qaeda group, right, they flew planes into the Twin Towers there, blew them both up, right? They flew a plane into the Pentagon, and they're going to fly a plane probably into the Capitol in Washington, right? But that was people on board the plane got messages on their phones, and then they knew that their plane is hijacked, so they had a fight, and that plane went down in Pennsylvania. Anyway, so that was all 9/11, right? Whenever you see P here, right, PPP, right, that's planned to use Al Qaeda attack to attack Iraq. So what this is showing is from day one, right, the attack was up by Al Qaeda, but they planned to use attack to attack Iraq, right? They had an agenda against Iraq. And when we get to lesson 4, you'll see the economic basis of that agenda, right? When you see F, it's jacking up fear. So it's something is passed in the public to jack up fear, right? As you can see, they had a big concerted fear campaign. Fear, fear, fear. Now that's you see it's timed with the 1-year anniversary of 9/11, right? So it brings back all the fear, when all that fear, all that terror, all the memories of that horrible day are reactivated, right? Then you jack up fear. Fear of what? Fear of Al Qaeda? No, fear of Iraq, right? But there's a transference, right? Fear is not that rational. Fear is blind, right? You jack up fear, right? You know, you can easily do a bait and shift it on Iraq, right? And that's exactly what happened, right? You jack up fear in the American public here, right? You push to get a congressional resolution, right? Authorizing the president to take military actions against Iraq, right? That becomes the legal basis for the war, right? There's no need for a declaration of war, right? This is legal basis sufficient for war, right here, congressional resolution, all right? Okay, so what happened is day 1, right, and day 2, they're planning to use this to go after Iraq, right? Al Qaeda did this, but they want to use it to attack Iraq, right? And then there's more things here, and then just before the 9/11 anniversary, they start the fear campaign, all right? And then it's daily fear. They're going to have a nuclear weapon. They're going to use a nuclear weapon against us. They're going to give a nuclear weapon to, Al Qaeda, and then they're going to use it against us, right? Time is short. Time is running out, right? We don't want to have a mushroom cloud as a smoking gun, right? Blah, 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 blah. Fear every day, every news program, right? Every weekend program, the Sunday programs, right? There was someone there. It was Rumsfeld, Cheney, or Condoleezza Rice jacking up fear, right? And then Colin Powell later. So there's a blitz of fear campaign, right? Oh, before that, they bragged about a plan. So this is the plan they bragged about. On September 7th, right here, right, a Bush administration official was reported to have said, I don't know if he said it that day, right, probably the day before, we have a meticulously planned strategy to persuade the public, the Congress, and the allies of the need to confront the threat of Saddam Hussein. In the end, it will be difficult for someone to vote against it. So they got a plan to make it difficult. What he's talking about was the Iraq War resolution, right? The administration official said. So who that was, this is like one of those anonymous leaks, right, to protect themselves. Why did they make it anonymously? Well, because they know it is passed to the public, right, but yet they're scot-free of it, right? They're not further questioned on it, right? It's anonymous. All right, so it gets it out there. So anyways, it's almost, this is like bragging. We got a plan to get them all to support this Iraq resolution. Now, what did they do? What was that plan? They built up a huge fear campaign, highly compressed, centered around 9/11. So you just have this, right? Then you launch this fear campaign. You shift the focus off of Al-Qaeda, bin Laden, right, and Al-Qaeda, who attacked us. You take all that fear built up from that, and there was a lot of fear. Right, 1 year anniversary, it's reactivated. They had 36 documentary TV programs covering the 9/11 attacks. You know, pictures of planes flying into buildings. You see them coming across, bam, blows up. Right, you know, pictures, you know, video of people jumping out of these buildings, 80 stories up or whatever it is. Right, why? Because they rather fall to their death instead of burn to death. Right, be burnt alive. Okay, so with all this fear reactivated, right, you pump up that fear even more, right? The potential of a nuclear weapon, of chemical weapons being used against us, right? And you build it all up, even though it turned out to be all false. It was all fear based upon that, WMD, right? And then you start pushing for a resolution. So amongst this fear campaign, you start saying we need a resolution. We need a resolution to protect us. To defend against this from happening, we need a resolution, right? And then you put the resolution vote right here on October 10th, right? Right before the congressional recess. Congressional recess is when the Congress goes out of session, right? For the last 3 weeks before what? Before the general election on the first Tuesday in November, the congressional election, right? So this is the last chance to go home and campaign. Right? This is our last-ditch effort to campaign. Now, you vote against this resolution then, right? Your opponent has you dead in his sights, right? You're dog food. You're done, right? You just committed political suicide because why? Right? You vote against with all this fear, right? And this is the thing that's going to keep us safe. You're going to vote against that, right? You're not just like some irresponsible, off-the-wall, radical, left-wing liberal, right? You're un-American. You're unpatriotic, right? You might as well be, you know, a terrorist lover, right? You don't care about the safety of the American public, right? You vote against that, you're done. Your opponent can just grill you. So in this situation, voting against this is political suicide, right? So they get the resolution vote. They successfully get the resolution vote, and you know you'll see that a lot of Democrats, right, went from being doves to being hawks, right? Why? Because there's so much pressure to do it, and so many Democrats voted for it. You know, I mean, Hillary Clinton voted for it. I know John Kerry voted for it. I'm ashamed of that. Blitz of Fear campaign. So yeah, Blitz of Fear campaign. Time with the 1 year anniversary of 9/11. You put the resolution vote. The Bush administration pushed hard congressional leaders to get the resolution vote before the recess, right? When at the same time, there was Democratic congressional leaders. I think it was Gephardt. Was Gephardt saying it? You know, and there's other people. Who was the Senate? I can't think of his name now. But they're saying, no, please don't put it before the election, right? Put it after the election because why? If you put it before, it's going to politicize the vote, right? It's going to create leverage that's going to, make it not about what is just and right in people's minds, but about, man, I better do this because I want to get reelected. I don't want to be kicked out here, right? So this puts heavy leverage, heavy pressure to get votes for that resolution. And sure enough, they got the resolution. Now, once they got a resolution that authorizes the president to use military force, this is the same thing that was done to get the Gulf of Tonkin to get the Vietnam War. They got the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, right? And it's a euphemistic way. It's said in euphemistic terms, right? It's passed off totally like non-threatening, right? This is just authorizing the president to use military force. Well, what is the use of military force? Right? That is an open book right there. That's a blank check from having one person shoot one bullet, right? Or one person using one club as a soldier, hitting someone on the head, to a 15-year war, right? It's unlimited, right? It's carte blanche. So that's how they got the war, all right? Now, so this is what happens. I'll go through the details of and all these facts. I know are not going to be remembered. This is going to be, like what? What did you say? All right. So 9/11 attacks occurred on 9/11. Twin Towers were attacked. Pentagon was hit, and probably attempt upon the capital, our nation's capital, right? Other people say it could have been the White House, but I think the Capitol was probably the more likely target. Okay. So now on 9/11, Department of Defense, Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz push hard to pin it on Iraq, right? And as evidence of this, I'm going to take excerpts from Richard Clarke's book, Against All Enemies. Right, here's his book, right? Here's Richard Clarke. Richard Clarke was the U.S. anti-terrorism czar, coordinating the anti-terrorist efforts of all U.S. intelligence agencies, CIA, FBI, NSA, DIA, for example, right? Under both Clinton and Bush, right? He was in the White House, ground zero, right, when this happened, right? He was at the center of the White House decision and discussion making at the time of 9/11. All right. So this is what he says, Clarke, on 9/11. He says this, right? Then I realized with almost a sharp physical pain, right? It's like he got a gut, like sting in his gut, that Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz were going to try to take advantage of this national tragedy to promote their agenda about Iraq. All right. So you'll see here that the neocons had a plan to overthrow 7 Middle East governments in 5 years, right? They're going to overthrow governments in 5 years, all right? It sounds shocking, but, that's something that the U.S. government has been long in the business of overthrowing governments, right? But here's the plan, right? And General Clarke here, who was the Supreme Commander of NATO, saw a copy of the plan, right? That was presented to him by one of his former staff generals when he was serving active duty. I'll get to that in a second, right? All right. Now, on 9/12, Bush and Clarke are together, and Bush asks Clarke if there's a connection between Al Qaeda and Iraq. Clarke said no. Bush told him to look again. Clarke said this. So Clarke said, no, there's no connection between Iraq and Al Qaeda. Clarke said no. So Bush said, look again. And then Clarke says, oh, absolutely, we'll look again. I was trying to be more respectful, more responsive. But, we have looked several times for state sponsorship of Al Qaeda and not found any real linkage to Iraq. Iran plays a little, as does Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, Yemen, right? Look into Iraq, Saddam, the president said testily, and left us. So he's trying to pin it on Iraq, right? He's pushing to get it pinned on Iraq. Lisa Gordon Haggerty stared after him with her mouth hanging open, like what the hell, right? So there was not connection between Iraq and Al Qaeda, and we find out later in 2006 Senate intelligence report they were hunting down the religious fanaticals because these guys. What is ISIS? ISIS is a branch of Al Qaeda, right? And what do they want to do? What's their goal? To set up an Islamic State, which they did. They did because we destabilized, weakened that territory, right? And so they got a little foothold there. Clark, having been attacked by Al-Qaeda, for us to now go bombing Iraq in response would be like our invading Mexico after the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. All right. So he's saying no connection to Al-Qaeda, right? So then he says, having been attacked by Al-Qaeda, for us to now go bombing Iraq in response, we didn't just go bombing Iraq, we invaded Iraq, right? In response would be like our invading Mexico after the Japanese attacks in Pearl Harbor. So, December 7th, 1941 comes along, right? Oh, the damn Japs attacked us in Pearl Harbor. What should we do? I don't know. Well, think, what should we do? Oh, I know. Let's invade Mexico. That's how stupid it was, right? But did Americans ask a second? Ask? Hell no, right? The vast majority of Americans fully supported this. 70 to 80% of Americans at the time of the invasions fully supported our invasion of Iraq, right? Now people are going to say, no, I didn't support it. No, the polls, the polls show that 70 to 80% of Americans supported our invasion of Iraq back then, right? So Americans were suckered, right? Now let's see how they're suckered. Okay, let's see this fear campaign. And was this fear campaign just an accident, or do they say they have a plan? They said they have a plan. And does it look like they conducted a plan here? Now, 4-star General Wesley Clark, Supreme Commander of NATO, right here, this guy. 4 stars. That's the highest rank you can get in the military during peacetime. The only time you get 5 stars is when you have a major war with multiple nations in an allied coalition, right? And you need some sort of supreme commander, right? Like General Eisenhower, supreme commander of all allied forces, right? So he's going to have an extra star to outrank any of the higher generals. So the highest rank generals have in the military is 4 stars, right? The only time you get 5 stars is when you need someone at the very top. When you have large combined forces. Okay, so 4-star General Wesley Clark, Supreme Commander of NATO, right, visits the Pentagon on 9/21, 10 days later, runs across an officer from the Joint Staff, an officer who was formerly in General Clark's staff when he was Supreme Commander of NATO. Right? Here's a general says, I want you to know we're going to attack Iraq. General Clark, why? Here's the general, we don't know. Clark, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? No. 6 weeks later, Clark goes back to the Pentagon and sees the same general. Clark, we're still going to attack Iraq? Oh, sir, it's worse than that. He pulls out a piece of paper. That's the plan I'm telling you about right up here. Right? I got this memo from the Secretary of Defense Office. We're going to attack and destroy the governments of 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Iran. Well, did we take down Iraq? Yeah. Did we take down Libya? Yeah. Did we help support? Did American neocon organizations support the Arab Spring, which led to the taking down Syria? Yeah. Right. We'll get to these neocon organizations, neocon NGOs. Right. Okay. Iran. Right. There's a big push to go after Iran in 2012. Yeah. Right. There was a big push to go after Iran. To take action against Iran. We just got finished with this whole Iraq debacle. Now we're going to go after Iran. Okay, so here's the video. I can show you parts of this video. Well, here's the source. I'll pull it up real quick. Wow. It's going slow here. What the heck? Why is it going so slow? My goodness.
people is thinking.
What happened in 9/11 is we didn't have a strategy, we didn't have bipartisan agreement, we didn't have American understanding of it, and we had instead a policy coup in this country. A coup. A policy coup. Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I couldn't stay away from Mother Army. I went back there to see Don Rumsfeld. I'd worked for him as a White House fellow in the 1970s. All this is in the book. And I said, am I doing okay on CNN? He said, yeah, fine. He said, I'm thinking about it. He says, I read your book. And he said, this is a book that talks about the Kosovo campaign. And he said, I just want to tell you, he said, nobody's going to tell us where or when we can bomb them. Nobody. He said, I'm thinking of calling this a floating coalition. What do you think about that? I said, well, sir, thanks for reading my book. And, he said, thanks, that's all the time I've got. Really? And I went downstairs, I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He said, I said, well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, no. He said, but I guess they don't know what to do about terrorism, and so they think, but they can attack states, and they want to look strong, and so I guess they think if they take down a state, it will intimidate the terrorists. And you know, it's like that old saying he said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem has to be a nail. Well, I walked out of there pretty upset, and then we attacked Afghanistan. I was pretty happy about that. We should have. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Seven countries in
All right, so, well, I'll get
5
to
years. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. He was about to show it to me. He said, because I want to talk about it. And I sat on this information for a long time, for about 6 or 8 months. I was so stunned by this, I couldn't begin to talk about it. And I couldn't believe it would really be true, but that's actually what happened. These people took control of the policy in the United States. And I realized then, it came back to me, a 1991 meeting I had with Paul Wolfowitz. You know, in 2001 he was Deputy Secretary of Defense, but in
All right, so we're going to go back to it. That's pretty much what I recorded here. All right, so here now is the fear campaign method, all right? And I'll just identify key categories of things that were done, right? Methods used in the fear campaign. One category is you had a barrage of hyped up fear, which were lies. I mean, flat out lies, right? On weapons of mass destruction. They pushed a ticking time bomb, constantly saying this. Time is running out. Time is short. We got to get this before, you know, if they get a nuclear bomb, it'll be too late, right? We got to do this. They're pushing the time element, right? I mean, that works great. The time constraint, I don't know, the ticking time bomb. Time release of false manufactured intelligence reports. There were so many false intelligence reports that were pumped out. Like I have them listed. There's like 5 or 6. I list them all at the bottom here. Time release of lying intelligence reports. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So these were all time release. The whole idea is you want to time these things. Remember we talked about salience, right? These guys understand salience. They know exactly when they have to be released. The big push is right before the vote, right? And they put the vote right before the recess, right? They had a big buildup. You see the buildup of fear? Fear. This was a big push to get the fear, right? time release of all these intelligence reports, right? Right before that damn vote. There was an intelligence report released right about here, the British one, right, which is a lie, right? And there's a number of them throughout, but this was a big push right here. Cheney said, Saddam, okay, this is kind of the start of it. Well, let me finish this. So time arrested terror cells, all right? We'll talk about these terror cell arrests, right? People will say, oh, you can't time those, right? Well, come on, right? What does it take? Phone call to one person, director of the FBI, you know? I mean, you can't prove it. I can't prove it without having, recorded that conversation, right? There's no way you're going to find proof of that, right? But come on, you look at the pattern here, right? You'll see the pattern, right, when it emerges. And it's not hard to do. It takes one phone call, right? And who's going to know? Oh, conspiracy theory. I know people are going to say that. you know it. A barrage of fear speeches. They're not going to see the whole big picture, right? They'll just jump into one thing they think they can attack. Probably be that. A barrage of fear speeches by Bush. So Bush is pumping up a bunch of speeches. Fear-generating sound bites like mushroom cloud as a smoking gun. All right, so 8/26, a few days before 9/11, a couple weeks, all right? So here's a start, 8/26, all right? A little bit before 9/11. This is when they bragged about their plan to manipulate everyone into voting for the resolution. Cheney said Saddam Hussein would fairly soon have nuclear weapons, okay? So Cheney said he's going to have nuclear weapons soon, fairly soon. Now, was that true? We go into Iraq. Iraq has no nuclear weapons program. Nothing going on, right? Fear-mongering. So this is one of the Fs. Nuclear weapons. Oh, no. Saddam's going to have nuclear weapons. Cheney is vehement on necessity of military action against Iraq. Well, he's going to have nuclear weapons. We got to take military action against him, right? Why? I don't know. There's a lot of people who have nuclear weapons, but he's going to use them against us. We know that. Right? If he gets a nuclear weapon, he's going to use it against us, or he's going to give it to some religious radical, who would, in reality, use it against him first. But no, he's going to give it to them. 8/28. Okay, terrorist cell from Detroit arrested and charged. So on 8/28, a terrorist cell of Detroit is arrested and charged. Right? Now, with the terrorist, here's the significance of this. If there's a terrorist cell, this is after 9/11, when a terrorist cell attacked us on 9/11, right? So there's more terrorist cells. This brings fear. There's terrorists living among us. They're all around us. We don't know who they are, right? It gets people to look at every Muslim with suspicion, right? They could be a terrorist, right? Especially after a real attack occurred, right? So you got, there's still terrorists among us. It builds fear. Terrorist cell in Seattle arrested. Terrorists all around us. Terrorists living among us, more fear, right? Same day, Detroit and Seattle. 9/3, New York Times reports the first wave of TV documentaries reliving 9/11 start, right? 30 more to follow. So there were 36 TV documentaries in all, reliving the 9/11 attacks. All the video footage of the planes going in, people jumping out of burning buildings, right? Falling to their deaths, and reactivate all the fear and terror of 9/11. So this makes it real again, especially with the anniversary coming up. So 9/4, Rumsfeld calls for preemptive attacks in Iraq. Right. So this is like usage of the term preemptive attack. Attack them preemptively. Attack them first. Why? Because they're going to attack us. Oh, are they? That's the big question here, right? And the thing about it is, this always works because people have in mind, there's always a chance they can attack us. Let's go attack them. Okay, New York Times reports. White House officials said today that the administration was following a meticulously planned strategy to persuade the public, Congress, and the allies of the need to confront the threat of Saddam Hussein. In the end, it will be difficult for someone to vote against it, referring to the Iraq War resolution, the administration officials said. So the Bush administration openly admitted that they planned for all this. Right? They had a plan to get people to vote, a meticulously planned strategy, to get people to vote for to persuade the whole public and Congress to vote for, get Congress to vote for the resolution with the backing of the public. 9/8. Bush administration announces Iraq has been stepping up its relentless quest for nuclear weapons, right? Going all out to get nuclear weapons, right? Fear-mongering. Was there any truth to this? Did they have WMD? No. They were not the victims of. Now, here's another thing. The Bush administration was not the victims of bad intelligence. They cooked up bad intelligence. From the yellow cake to aluminum tubes to mobile biological weapons labs to exact quantities. Bush was naming off exact quantities of, whatever, botulinum, ricin, anthrax, and he's given exact barrels. They have 1,732 barrels, right? Given exact numbers, like he knows exactly, creating the impression in people's mind that we have good solid evidence, we know this is real, right? He's just making up numbers. And they cooked up this stuff, right? They didn't want to hear the intelligence that there's no evidence of weapons of mass destruction. So they cooked up their own intelligence organization in the basement of the Pentagon and relied heavily upon the testimony of one person, a guy named El-Chalabi, right? Who was feeding them stuff that they wanted to hear, right? Who was this guy? Was this guy an expert on WMD? No, he was a banker and he was an oil man who wanted to be president of Iraq. He was the leader of the Iraq National Congress, which is the political party in exile, kicked out of the country. He wants to go back and become the president, and he's feeding the stuff. The German intelligence warned us that he was a known fabricator, right? This guy was known to be a liar, right? And so the Bush administration relies heavily upon his testimony, one man's, right, to get what they want to hear. And they cooked up all this stuff on the yellow cake. They had from Joe Wilson, right, that there's no evidence of the yellow cake sales, right? They had from the ambassador from Niger a report that there's no evidence for the yellow cake sales, right? It was debunked. And they had experts from nuclear experts, right? The aluminum tubes were not suited for centrifuges. They're tubes whose wall thickness and construction was for rocket artillery. And then what does Condoleezza Rice? Condoleezza Rice said those tubes can only be used for nuclear centrifuges, right? They're lying. They made so many lies, right? They weren't the victims of bad intelligence. They made it up. The Bush administration scare tactics. The first sign of a smoking gun may be a mushroom cloud. I think Condoleezza Rice said that actually, right? There was no nuclear weapons program, right? How do you there's nothing there, a nuclear weapons program is highly extensive. Not just to get huge amounts of ore. There's huge quantities of ore you have to get shipped over. Then you're going to have to process that, purify that, right? And then there's a number of methods. You're going to have you're going to have to centrifuge it, right, to separate it, the U-235 from the U-238, like a very fractional difference, right? You first have to make it into gas by reacting with fluorine. You get uranium hexafluoride, which is a gas at high temperature, right? Then you centrifuge that to get the heavy ones to separate from the lighter ones, right? Then you skim off the lighter ones, right? And you got to keep repeating that process to get it more and more pure, right? Until you get to somewhere at 95, 97% U-235, right? Or the other possible way is to build a nuclear reactor. Well, how do you hide a nuclear reactor, right? If you get a nuclear reactor, you can make a heavy water reactor, which can get uranium to absorb neutrons, right? And then they undergo a process called beta decay, which a neutron then decays and breaks apart into a proton and electron. With a new proton, you have a brand new element. You have plutonium. Now, plutonium is a fissile material that is suitable for bombs, right? So you can use any uranium to get the vast majority are 238, but you can use all that 238, right, to get plutonium, right? So that's an easier way. But then you need a reactor, right? And they have no nuclear program. Bush administration says Saddam Hussein's effort to build an arsenal of immense destructive weapons leaves U.S. little choice but to act against Iraq. That's 9/8. There was no chemical, biological, nuclear program. And in fact, Bush admits it. I'll show you where Bush admits it. Here's a video where he admits it at time 23 seconds. And at time 1:15, he says that there's no connection. Iraq had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. So this is our President Bush openly admitting that these things.
Suiciders to kill innocent life, who had relations with Zarqawi. Imagine what the world would be like with him in power. The idea is to try to help change the Middle East. Now look, part of the reason we went into Iraq was the main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked.
That is so ridiculous. You know what the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction is? Well, you still got the scientists around, right? There you go. So you got the capacity because you got the knowledge. Did they have the materials there? Did they have the buildings, the systems, the equipment? No. But you know, you still have the scientists, right? So you can make it. You know, once if you want to go back and rebuild it, right?
Before we started the freedom agenda in the Middle East, they were. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing, except for its part.
There you go. He admits that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Then he had some bullshit after that. Oh, but it's blah, 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 but it's bullshit, right? 9/9. So there's Bush a minute. That was in 2004, I believe. No, 2004. Right. Well, okay, there's no weapons of mass destruction. We spent a whole year scouring the country, right? And okay, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, right? All right. So Cheney warned, right? So big push of this is weapons of mass destruction. Warned grimly that time is not on our side. Here's the ticking time bomb. Time is not on our side. They kept repeating this. We're running out of time. President Bush, top national security officials said nearly in unison today that Saddam Hussein's effort to build an arsenal of immensely destructive weapons left the United States with little choice but to act against Iraq. All right. What weapons of mass destruction? Time release of false intelligence reports. This is the first one. Iraq could be only months away from producing a nuclear weapon if it could lay its hands on a necessary enriched uranium or plutonium. Right. Now, where did they get that uranium? From an African country, right? Joe Wilson went over and investigated. There was no evidence of a sale of, and they said, you can't hide it. It's huge. It's a huge truck, huge semi-truck convoy, right? And he goes through all the details, right, of how impossible it was. Bush speech, and when we went in there's no evidence of it, right? So there was no evidence of the uranium, and we scoured that country. 9/11, Bush speech, and you know what people do? You know, this is what I hear. I hear this a lot from the average person. Oh, well, they shipped it to they shipped it all before they got a chance to Syria. Well, why would they ship it to Syria, who was a Shia nation, who was the enemy of Iraq, right? You're going to ship all these weapons to Syria, right? Saddam would do that, right? I mean, come on. And there's no, and they'll believe it. There's no evidence for that. All right. Okay. So Bush's speech in 9/11. Bush has a speech commemorating 9/11. This is where they're kicking off their big campaign to build fear, to get this, to manipulate the public and the Congress, get the resolution vote. As soon as they get that resolution vote, they got their hot little ticket to war in hand, right? That's what people don't realize, right? This has been done in the past. It's amazing that congressmen, fell for this, right? 36 TV documentaries on 9/11 have aired at this point. So at this point, 36 TV documentaries have aired, reactivating the terror of 9/11. On 9/11, that same day, this guy here, Ramzi bin al-Shib, a high-ranking al-Qaeda leader, and one of the 9/11 plotters, the guy who plotted the 9/11 attack, is captured on 9/11 anniversary, right? Boy, there's terrorists still out there. They're on the loose, fear-mongering, right? On 9/12, then Bush, this is where they have the bait and switch, where they switch it onto Iraq. Bush speech, he goes before the entire General Assembly of the United Nations, right? And he says Saddam is the real terror threat now, ties Saddam to 9/11 with a bait and switch fear-mongering, right? And if an emboldened regime were to supply these weapons, he's already saying they got these weapons of mass destruction, right? Supply these weapons to terrorists, allies, then attacks of 9/11 would be a prelude to far greater horrors, right? So who are they going to give this to? To Al-Qaeda, right? Al-Qaeda, who would use it first against Iraq, right? Because they want to establish a caliphate there. Why would he give it to people who would use it against them? They're hunting down Al-Qaeda. They're hunting down the religious extremists. New York Times, President Bush has formally changed the face of American primary enemy from Osama bin Laden, whereabouts unknown, to Saddam Hussein. Boom, bait and switch, right? And it worked. People just, without skipping a beat, people just shifted onto Iraq, right? Assumed it was a terrorist threat. Of course, the top anti-terrorist threat said that, well, for us to go, after Iraq would be like invading Mexico after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. But the average American didn't see any difference. Okay, 9/12, same day. Bush administration, they release a false intelligence report. So here's the second false intelligence report on the magnitude of the threat of Saddam's WMD. So they're building up perception of belief in WMD when they didn't exist, right? False intelligence report. This is a classic method of manipulating the public. This was done during the Vietnam War to get the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. It was part of the 30-day plan. Release a modified form of the Jordan Report, the white paper on communist aggression from the North, right? Right in the plan. 9/13, Bush said the United States would insist on short deadlines to take action against Iraq. We're talking days and weeks, not months and years, he said. This is fear-mongering again. It's preconditioning the public to accept military action. Remember we talked about, planning it ahead, to create expectations? 9/13, FBI announced the arrest of the Buffalo 6 terrorist cell. So now more terrorists among us, right? So we got terrorists here, Detroit cell, Seattle cell. We got the key plotter here arrested. Now we got arrest of the Buffalo 6. Now, terrorists living all around us, living among us. Investigation into the 5 Buffalo area men arrested on terror cells. Charges began before September 11th. Terrorist attacks, government sources have told CNN, right? So this is before the terrorist attacks, right? And it turned out they were being investigated 6 months. The 6 report to the FBI, in June of 2001. Okay, so they report to the FBI in June 2001, so that's June, July, August, September. Give it 4 months, right? Let's say it's early September, 11, early September. So 4 months. 4 months before the 9/11 attacks, they report to the FBI, right? Which means this is a year afterward. That's 12, 16 months after they're known terrorists, right? And 12 months after the 9/11 attacks. Then suddenly they're finally arrested on virtually the anniversary of 9/11. They've known about these guys for 16 months, over a year, almost a year and a half. They knew about these guys. And then the governor of New York, Pataki, I think was his name, said that this is proof that the terrorist threat is real, right? Again, terrorists living among us, fear, right? So there's a bunch of people arrested right around 9/11, and then there's a bunch of people arrested right before the vote. You'll see that, right? It's pretty convenient, that these happened right then, right? They knew about these guys for 16 months, 9/17, Saddam Hussein agrees to unconditional return of weapons inspectors to Iraq. So what happened is this. Here's the background. All right. So Saddam Hussein obviously is feeling the heat. Right. He knows that there's a big push to take action against him. All right. He can sense there's a big concerted effort. So he's like, oh, come back, please, get the weapons inspectors back here. Right. He'd rather have weapons inspectors than to be, bombed, right? Now, here's the history of weapons inspectors. In fact, this guy right here wrote a book on it, right? His name is Scott Ritter, and he was the chief on-the-scenes weapons inspector by the United Nations during a period between 1991 and 1998, all right? And he writes a book outlining all the things that the U.S. government and CIA did to destroy the weapons inspectors' efforts, to block the weapons inspectors' efforts, right? To use the weapons inspectors as games to make attacks on Iraq, right? I'd have to explain it all. I'll explain part of it later in a later lesson, right? But we did a lot of dirty things with the weapons inspectors, discrediting them, and then finally we pulled them out in 2008, right? And the common thing, it was the United States, United Nations who pulled them out in 2008. The common thing that said is, well, the Iraqis kicked them out, which is not true, right? It was a U.S. decision and the United Nations to pull them out. And it was after we played many games with it. The games we played were to use the weapons inspections as a means to manufacture an incident which would justify bombings, right? Use the weapons inspectors to manufacture an incident to kick off a coup to overthrow Saddam, right? This is what Scott Ritter is saying, that they're bringing me this stuff, right? And I'm supposed to conduct these inspections. And use of weapons inspectors to get intelligence on presidential palaces, right? So that we can have assassination attempts on Saddam. All right, so... And Scott Ritter says this. He said that, his overall view was that they weren't really trying to use the weapons inspectors to find weapons of mass destruction. They were using the weapons inspections as a means to create the perception and to pass the perception in the American public that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and were trying to conceal them in order to maintain sanctions on Iraq, and those sanctions on Iraq would create economic conditions so horrible in the country that eventually Saddam Hussein would be overthrown. Right? They'd have a coup from within, or an overthrow from within. But it wasn't about, and he's there for from 1991, the first Gulf War, to 1998, and he found nothing. And he was a big opponent. When all this was happening, Scott Ritter saying, there's nothing there, right? He's an ex-Marine Corps major, right? When he was a weapons inspector, he was a serving Marine Corps major, and he was part of General Schwarzkopf's intelligence staff during the first Gulf War. All right, so Saddam, he's welcoming back the weapons inspectors, right? Because he knows that, he hopes that weapons inspectors will be sufficient and not require the U.S. to attack Iraq, right? He can sense that the U.S. is itching to attack him, so he's trying to get the weapons inspectors back, all right? Now, very next day, the Bush administration, U.S. rejects Iraq arms inspection officers, stating inspections threaten to split support for military action. So they're saying openly they want military action, right? And weapons inspectors threaten to split support for military action, which obviously that's why Saddam Hussein's doing this, right? Because he'd rather have the inspectors come back than have bombs dropped on his head. Bush doesn't want weapons inspectors, prefers to attacking Iraq, right? So real purpose of the inspections, that's in lesson plan number 3, or the third lesson. All right, I'll present that then. What Scott Ritter has to say about that. Okay, 9/19, the Bush administration appeared well on its way yesterday to bulldozing Congress into the swift passage of a resolution endorsing a possible military campaign against Iraq, irrespective of whatever emerges from the United Nations Security Council, right? So it's saying that they're going to take unilateral action, right? This is from a London newspaper, The Independent. So did the Bush administration bulldoze Congress? Yeah. Did the Bush administration apply leverage on Congress to vote for it? Yeah. Did they use the election? Yeah. Did they do that right after with a concerted effort, a fear campaign to manipulate the public and Congress? Yeah. Did they brag about a plan they had to do this? Yeah. A meticulously planned strategy. All right. So Bush today, this is 920, asked for the congressional resolution to authorize. So he's pushing for a resolution. So here's the words of the resolution. Whenever you see R, right? Talking about push for the resolution now. Bush today asked for a congressional resolution to authorize military force against Iraq. It was a whirlwind day on multiple fronts as Mr. Bush made his hardest push yet for swift action on Iraq. Secretary Powell and Defense Secretary Rumsfeld took the administration's case to Capitol Hill. Bush pushed for a vote before October 15th, right? That's the congressional recess, right? That's when they go back home for the final 3 weeks to do the last-minute scramble to get reelected. So this is the most vulnerable time. 920. There's a time release of another white paper, intelligence report. Bush administration publishes its rationale for preemptive attack, right? Okay, 920, Secretary of State Powell implores Congress today to pass swiftly the strongest Iraq resolution possible, arguing that anything less would undermine the efforts to build international support for ousting Saddam Hussein. So they're talking about regime change, they're talking about a resolution, and this resolution in the wording is going to say it's going to authorize the president to use military force. That's the key phrase in there, authorizing the president to use military force. Once they got that, they have their hot little ticket of war, just like the Vietnam War, just like the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. And that one was manipulated just as well. I'll explain that one too. Okay, 921. Leaked to the press that the Pentagon has completed and delivered to the President Bush a highly detailed set of military options for attacking Iraq. Okay, again, this is preparing the public to accept military actions against Iraq, preparing the public mind by planning in mind expectations for war, thereby facilitating passive acceptance of war. You know, and like I said, at that time, 70 to 80% of Americans were in favor of U.S. invading Iraq, right? I know people today would say, I was never in favor, but you know, the polls say 70, 80%. $925. British Prime Minister Blair asserted today that the Iraqi government of President Saddam Hussein could launch chemical or biological warheads within 45 minutes. This was such a flagrant lie. Right, 45 minutes, but time, again, remember we talked about ticking time bomb? No time left, right? 45 minutes, you know? He can bomb us within 45 minutes, we can be destroyed. The report said that Iraq had stored and was continuing to produce, which was totally untrue. The Dilfer report says they had no WMD program since 1991. The Dilfer report is the official United Nations weapons inspections report after they went into Iraq, after we invaded. And in 2004, they published a report that said there was no program whatsoever since 1991, right? And that's when we put the sanctions on. The report said Iraq had stored and was continuing to produce chemical, biological agents capable of causing mass casualties, including mustard gas, sarin, anthrax, and botulinum. I think I made a diagram. What did I do with it? Is it here? I'll probably have to do this again. This is very ragged. This is practice, basically. No. I made a diagram somewhere showing, it's basically, maybe I'll get to it. Okay. So Iraq got rid of its WMD program in 1991, all right? Well, first of all, who sold them much of that? Who sold them much of the material? Who authorized it? U.S. sold them a lot of the material they used to make WMD. Equipment and also the material. We sold them. If you look at the Wrangle report, we sold them oodles of stuff that were biological warfare weaponized warfare stuff, right? Page after page of all sorts of toxins, right? We sold them the stuff to make chemical weapons, right? And they had it, right? But they got rid of it in 1991. Why? Because sanctions were applied, no oil out of your country. Well, what is oil? That's 60% of their economy. 60%, does that mean at least 40% behind? Hell no, right? That 40% is cut, right, by the loss of the 60%. Who's got money to buy that 40%, whether it's food or whatever, right? So that destroys their economy. Their economy is destroyed. The whole economy is destroyed. Now, how do you compare your whole economy, which is your whole means of buying any sort of weapons, right, to one class of weapons, weapons of mass destruction, right? Was that the only weapons system they had? What about all their armies? What about all their armor? What about all their artillery? What about all their aircraft, all their naval ships, all their helicopters, right? Now, weapons of mass destruction is only one element of that, right? Now, all of that, every single weapon system they have, can you support that without your economy? No. So does weapons of mass destruction compare at all to your whole economy? Hell no. So does it make sense that he got rid of his WMD, like, you know, when you hold your whole economy hostage? Well, yeah, right? So the Dilfer report proves that since 1991, there was no WMD program. But here it said, where's Blair? Continuing to produce chemical and biological agents capable of causing mass casualties, including mustard, sarin, anthrax, botulinum toxin. British were in cahoots with the American government on this, right? Both are passing lies. The two biggest conspirators here was U.S. and Great Britain, right? Blair administration. Oh, man. 926, Bush makes fear-mongering speech. Danger to our country is grave. The danger to our country is growing, right? The Iraq regime possesses, so this is times constraint, ticking time bomb. Got to get it done fast. It's only going to get bigger. The Iraq regime possesses biological chemical weapons. The Iraq regime is building its facilities necessary to make biological and chemical weapons. And according to the British government, the Iraq regime could launch a biological or chemical attack in as little as 45 minutes after the order was given. So he's citing a false report here, right? He's citing Tony Blair here. All right. No, all right. There are Al-Qaeda terrorists inside Iraq. The regime is seeking a nuclear bomb, and with fissile material, could build one within a year. Okay. So were there really Al-Qaeda terrorists in Iraq? All right. What does the 2006 Senate Intelligence Report state? Right. It states that here's Iraq, right? After the 1991 First Gulf War, all right, the U.S. kind of urged the Kurds to revolt, right? The Kurds revolted, right? But we didn't come to the backing as we'd promised, right? And so Saddam Hussein started whacking the Kurds. So they retreated up to a northern territory up here. And then to help them, we established a no-fly zone to keep Iraqis out here. We're just going to bomb the crap out of any Iraqi force that try to come up here, right? So here's the northern no-fly zone, right? Now, there was a small group of not Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda-related radical religious fundamentalist group, right? Al-Qaeda-related that was in Iraq, about 200 or less people, right, who were hiding out in northern Iraq, which was off limits to Saddam Hussein, right? He was trying to hunt them down, right, because they threatened the Iraqi government, right? So what the Senate Intelligence Report says is Saddam Hussein was trying to gather intelligence, try to get spies into that, infiltrate into that group, right? but they're off limits, right? So that was the only Al-Qaeda. They were not Al-Qaeda, right? They're Al-Qaeda related, all right? And they're out of Saddam's touch, right? The regime is seeking a nuclear bomb and with fissile material that could build them within a year. All right, here's the Senate Intelligence Report. Oh, I just mentioned the stuff from the Senate Intelligence Report. What Al-Qaeda terrorists? There was only a small group of loosely related to Al-Qaeda who were hiding from Saddam in U.S. protected Kurdish-controlled northern Iraq, off limits to Saddam, who was hunting them down in an effort to eliminate them because they posed a threat to him, right? But in a sense, who was protecting them? Well, our no-fly zone, right? Of course, the no-fly zone, I'm not saying that the no-fly zone was to protect Al-Qaeda. The no-fly zone was to protect the Kurds, but that's where they were hiding, all right? I'm not trying to say that. On 9/27, the Bush administration released another speech, our determination to confront an urgent threat to America. The dangers we face will only worsen from month to month, from year to year. Ticking time bomb. There you go. Ticking time bomb. It's just going to get worse. We got to take action now. To ignore these threats is to encourage them. My gosh. And when they have fully materialized, right, like they're real, there was nothing real about WMD there. It may be too late to protect ourselves and our friends and our allies. By then, the Iraq dictator would have the means to terrorize and dominate the region. Oh, a nuclear weapon. Each passing day could be the one on which the Iraq government gives anthrax or VX nerve gas, or someday a nuclear weapon to a terrorist ally. All right. Okay, let's take a look at this. So, first thing is, there was no weapons of mass destruction, none. This is making it sound like they're utterly real, and they're building them faster and faster, and it's only going to get worse from year to year, all right? And then he would give it to a terrorist ally. Well, who is the threat to the United States? What terrorist group, right? The religious fundamentalists, Al-Qaeda, right? Would he give it to Al-Qaeda? You know, that would be insane, because Al-Qaeda, their first goal, right? In fact, Richard Clarke says this in his book, Against All Enemies. He says that, this is what Richard Clarke said, through all their writing, it is clear that the number one goal is to establish their caliphate, right? The first thing they want to do is establish their religious state, right, in the Middle East somewhere. And to do that, you got to take down an existing country. You got to take down an Iraq. You got to take down an Syria. So they're a threat to the Iraqi government, right? Now, why would Saddam Hussein, why would any retard idiot give a nuclear weapon if he had it, which they did? First of all, they didn't have it. Why would he give it to a radical fundamentalist, jihadist terror organization who wants to use it against you first? I mean, was anyone asking that? Right? Was the press asking that? The press was not asking questions like that. The press was utterly disgusting. They hyped up the fear. I remember watching this in just dismay, thinking, oh, God, here comes another war, right? And the press was not playing the watchdog of America. They were just pumping up the fear for whatever reason. Maybe to sell their ratings or whatever. They were pumping up the fear. Uh, 9/27. Plan to use fear to control the election. Congressional leader Gephardt, I think I mentioned this earlier. The president assured Americans then that politics would not play a part in deciding issues of life and death. War is what he's talking about, which the congressional resolution would authorize. It's amazing that congressmen and senators did not see that resolution as a war resolution, right? Given the history of resolutions leading to war. Which is why when Karl Rove told a Republican Party meeting last January that talk of war and terror themes could play to the GOP's advantage in the 2002 elections. Or last June when a computer disk containing a presentation by Mr. Rove, Karl Rove, I should have a picture of him here. He's a key player here, a power guy here, revealed a White House political strategy to focus on war as a way to maintain a positive issue environment. All right. What he said was this, as I recall. He said that, if we want to win the election, in come November, right? That's the positive environment. This is an election right here, right? We have to maintain the threat of war and the threat of terrorists, right? That's gonna play into the advantage of the Republicans, and it always does, because the Republican Party has this image of being better on defense than Democrats, right? When that is totally not true. When the Republicans get us into crap, right? And I've written strategy for wars, so I understand this stuff. Okay. So basically this is saying pushing war talk and terror talk will win us the November election. That's what this is about. Pushing talk on war and terror, right, will push the public into voting for Republicans. It will be to their advantage politically. Now, here's politicizing the resolution vote. Politicizing the resolution vote. Remember I said how you politicize that? It's an issue of life and death, should not be politicized, right? So the election should not be used as leverage to get a vote here. The Republicans made voting for the resolution an issue of patriotism. Oh, there you go. Remember I said if you vote against it, you're unpatriotic. Are people pumped up with patriotism? Heck yeah, especially when they feel threatened. They rally around the flag, right? Then you say they're unpatriotic because you vote against this. Well, people are not going to vote for you. You're dead, right? People say you're soft and terrorist. You're a terrorist lover. You don't care about American safety. Oh, is that what this is about? Well, that's the way it's portrayed. 928, the Bush administration demands weapons inspections at all of Saddam's presidential palaces. Remember up here, Saddam on 917? Yeah, Saddam said he agrees to unconditional returns of weapons inspectors. Then the Bush administration rejects it, saying we don't want to send weapons inspectors because we'd rather attack militarily, right? Weapons inspectors will threaten to split support for military action, right? And it would have, right? So then, they can't get around this issue. So you know what they say? They say, okay, we demand, where are we at here? We demand weapons inspectors at all presidential palaces. I clearly remember watching CNN at that day, and I remember watching reports of this, right? And they showed pictures of the basements of Saddam's palaces and how vast and open they were, right? He's going to store all his chemical weapons, biological weapons down there, right? Well, they didn't have any, right? But they said, okay, we're going to inspect his palaces. Now, I'll tell you what, Scott Ritter, this guy here, he outlines how they were using the weapons inspectors, right? They wanted to inspect the palaces. They inspect Saddam's palaces to get intelligence, all right, to plan for assassinations of Saddam. They wanted to embed structural engineers onto the weapons inspection teams to assess, the structure of his palaces so that they can bomb him and hopefully kill him, right? All right. And I'm trying to remember if it was leaked back then. I can't remember if it was leaked back then. So they're planning on using the weapons inspections to bomb Saddam in his palaces, right? But I told you this. Later, it was leaked after 2000. I think it was 2004. German newspaper report came out saying that it was leaked that the CIA had plans to use the palace inspections for attempts to assassinate Saddam. Right now, that's a CIA plan, right? Well, who would leak a CIA plan except for the CIA, right? Now, I don't have solid evidence on this, right? But I think this is totally a possibility, and this is totally in lines with the type of games the CIA plays. I know CIA games. I know the dirty lying crap they play, right? The games they manufacture to manipulate public perception, right? And so the idea here is this, right? So Bush administration, Saddam wants to invite the weapons inspectors back, hoping that it'll be acceptable for them to come in the country and he can show them. And there's no reason why he shouldn't want them back because he never had WMD, right? But they have in the past used weapons inspections, right, to try to bomb Iraq, to try to overthrow the government, and to try to get intelligence on assassination attempts on Saddam, right? So they're using the weapons inspections for dirty things, right? So, they know that, but then they're like, okay, we're going to let them in. Later, it was leaked that the CIA had plans to use the palace inspections for attempts to assassinate Saddam, right? And later, they were kicked out, right? So now, this is what I'm thinking, okay? And again, I don't have the hard evidence on all this, right? But I'll tell you the truth, the one and only time, during the whole buildup before we invaded, where I feared that maybe that the Iraqis did have chemical weapons, I thought, for the whole time, I thought it was bullshit. Right, this is just a lie, right? We're just trying to get a war again, right? We're just trying to manufacture war once again. And, this is not a new thing. For the American public, it's totally brand new, right? But for me, who studied all these wars, right, this is like just standard practice, right? War after war, we've done this. All right, so I'm thinking, okay, the whole WMD is bullshit, right? But the only time I thought, well, maybe they do have weapons of mass destruction is when the Iraqis eventually kicked out the weapons inspectors. I think it was like in early 2003, right? They kicked out the weapons inspectors. I'm like, why would they kick them out, right? But now, once it's been revealed that the CIA had leaked plans that they plan to use the palace inspections for attempts to assassinate Saddam, this all makes sense. We demand that we inspect Saddam's palaces, like he's going to store all his WMD in his palaces, right? All right. And then there's leaked by the CIA that there's plans to use the palace inspections to assassinate Saddam, and then they kick out the inspectors. Well, I can't connect all the dots. I'll tell you honestly right there, right? But the whole picture stinks, right? Because sure enough, they kicked out the weapons inspectors when they had no WMD, right? Why would they kick out the weapons inspectors? Maybe because they leaked this plan that they're going to try to use the palace inspections to assassinate Saddam, right? But what does that do? That manipulates the public perception. Americans think that he's hiding. So maybe this is part of it, but I don't know for sure, right? All this stinks to me, and that's a possibility. I'll just say that I can't say this for a fact, but boy, does this stink. And I know that Scott Ritter said they used the presidential palace inspections to gather intelligence to assassinate Saddam. All right, so 9/28. Secretary of State Rumsfeld said today that the U.S. intelligence has bulletproof evidence of links between Al-Qaeda and the government of President Saddam Hussein of Iraq. Bulletproof. In September 3rd, 6 months after we invaded, Bush publicly admitted there were no links. He said there was no connection between Al-Qaeda and Iraq. These guys were lying, right? Cheney was lying when he said that Al-Qaeda was behind 9/11. For months and months, Cheney was saying that. 2006 Senate intelligence report, Saddam was hunting down and executing Al-Qaeda religious extremists. Here's the first day in October. Bush timed release of a white paper stating the reasons why a congressional resolution was absolutely necessary, right? New York Times, Bush administration provides bulletproof reasons for a resolution, right? Bulletproof reasons. WMD primarily, Al-Qaeda links, and providing training to Al-Qaeda in the use of chemical weapons, which were false, okay? So there was one report, one person, what's his name? Al-Libi, that's right. Guy named Al-Libi, who was captured by the CIA, right? And then he was renditioned to Egypt, where torture is legal, right? And under torture, he said that one person, no corroboration, right? No physical evidence, said that okay. Wait. Al-Qaeda, okay. He said that Iraq was training Al-Qaeda in the use of WMD, use of chemical weapons, right? Now, the CIA rejected this, okay? Iraq had no chemical WMD. If they had no WMD, why would they be training people with WMD? This is bullshit. Why would you train WMD if you have no WMD? Why would you train them on WMD when who would be the first person they would use it on? Their first primary goal was to establish their caliphate. So they would turn around and use it on Iraq, right? Two people said this, Rice and Rumsfeld, right? Okay, now, when you see purple here, these are arrests, timed arrests, okay? All right, remember we said that they're timed, remember we said there's a batch right around, there's a batch timed around 9/11, right? Okay, there's a batch right before the resolution vote. Here's the resolution vote, right? Okay, the first one is John Lynn Walker. He's convicted and sentenced to 20 years, terrorist living all among us. So John Lynn Walker was American to join the Taliban. Then, very same day, Richard Reed, same day, 9/4 or 10/4. The infamous shoe bomber pleads guilty, terrorists all around us, living among us, right? 10/5, CIA time release of false intelligence report. Iraq is making WMD. 10/5, Mr. Bush called Saddam Hussein a cold-blooded killer who lies and deceives. Well, who lied and deceived? Who became a bigger? Well, Saddam Hussein was a big killer, no doubt about it. He was a scum. Of course, he was our scum for a long time. We supported him. Cold-blooded killer who steals and deceives. Who was the real cold-blooded killers here in this situation? Who lied and deceived and started the war and false pretenses? 10/5, terrorist cell in Portland arrested, right? Terrorists all around us, living among us, okay? Same day, another terrorist cell in Detroit arrested, terrorists living among us, right? Ooh, boy, the timing here. 2 days in a row here. Then next day, CIA time release of intelligence reports. Quote, this is not a quote. They're compiling an open book of the lives of hundreds, mostly young, mostly Muslim men in the United States, in the belief that Al-Qaeda trained terrorists remain in this country awaiting instructions to attack. Terrorists living among us, right? Fear-mongering, right? All this, 10/4, 10/5, 10/6, boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 3 days. How convenient. 10/6, Bush fear-mongering. Saddam Hussein has a horrible history of striking without warning, all right? Striking without warning. One example is the first Gulf War. I got to explain that, but I'm not going to get into that right now. 10/7, New York Times reports that the 9/11 fear scare tactics are undermining Democrat election hopes. So it's working. Karl Rove's strategy. Remember Karl Rove said it's create an active environment, a positive environment by pushing fear of war and fear of terrorism, right? Would win the election for him, right? Sure enough, it is. Karl Rove strategy. I actually have his picture. I'm going to pause here and get a picture of Karl Rove. Okay, here's Karl Rove right there. Power player, political strategist for Republican Party. All right, 10/7, Big Bush televised address to the nation. So this was his big, he had a number of national addresses, big address, number of speeches. We'll go over his speeches. This is his big one, right before the vote. This is the big buildup for the vote. I listened to this. I was sitting in my car. I remember where I listened to this. I was in Rockland, California, right outside this Chinese restaurant, sitting in my car, listening to his speech, just disgusted, right? Just thinking, oh God, here we go, right? Okay, big Bush televised address on national TV, pushing for a congressional resolution authorizing use of military force against Iraq, super fear-mongering. Quote, the time for denying and deceiving and delaying has come to an end. Saddam Hussein must disarm himself, or, for the sake of peace, we will lead a coalition to disarm him. Bush said Saddam Hussein could attack the United States or his allies on any given day with chemical or biological weapons. Yeah. Okay. 10/8, New York Times headlines, election fever turns dovish Democrats into hawks. So it's working. Bush plan is working. Karl Rove plan is working. All right? You're getting the Democrats to become hawks. They're going to vote for this damn resolution. Why? Because they're cowards. who don't. They're cowards who are going to try to cling to their office instead of doing what is right. All right, 9-9 or 10-9. The Daily Telegraph poll results. Bush speech effective. This speech right here, 10-7. Poll on his speech. President George W. Bush has swung American popular opinion firmly behind him by linking the threat from Iraq to 9/11. All right. So this whole plan, timing, the big push against Iraq with the anniversary of 9/11, right, and with all the terror attacks that were conducted by Al-Qaeda, not Iraq, right? Okay, it's working, right? People are connecting it with 9/11. Bait and switch. Build it up, flip it onto Iraq. Build up the fear created by 9/11, flip it onto Iraq. All right. So here's the resolution vote. All right, it's conducted, authorizing the president to use military force against Iraq. It passes, 77% vote for it in Senate, 69% in the House, right? The resolution is used then as a legal basis for the war. So as soon as they get this, this is just like, I saw this so clearly. As soon as they get this, they're going to have the war, all right? They got the legal ticket to war, just like Vietnam, all right? The resolution is used as a legal basis for the Iraq War. Given the toxic fear environment created by the Bush administration, to vote against this resolution would have been political suicide. All right? So then the congressional recess begins, all right? And there's 19 days, almost 3 weeks to your final 19 days of campaign, all right? Then you have the general election, and the Democrats get hammered, just like Karl Rove said, all right? In fact, I'm going to put his picture again. So Karl Rove's plan worked again. All right. They won the election. They gained control of both the House and the Senate. So prior to this, the Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate. All right. The Bush-Karl Rove plan worked. All right. Okay. So now let's take a look at the actions that were taken, and let's try to see if they're random or was there a clear pattern here. All right. They said, first of all, recall they said, I'm gonna copy this. Okay. All right, so is all this just random, happenstance, or was there a definite pattern here? Was there a definite plan? Well, first of all, there was a plan. The Bush administration official reported on September 7th, that we have a meticulously planned strategy to persuade the public, the Congress, and the allies of the need to confront the threat of Saddam Hussein. In the end, their plan, it will be difficult for someone to vote against it, the Iraq Resolution War. All right, so let's take a look at one of the fear-mongering elements here. The first wave of timed arrests, right? So the first wave was timed with 9/11. The first two happened before. It was on the same day, what a coincidence that 5 Arab al-Qaeda were arrested in Detroit and then terror assault arrested in Seattle, right, on the same day. And then on 9/11, what a coincidence, one of the planners was arrested one of the planners of the 9/11 attack. And then it's reported in the papers on 9/13, so they probably arrested on 9/11 also. Buffalo, 6 Al-Qaeda arrested, so they arrested these guys on right around 9/11. Feds knew of them since June of 2001, a full year and a half before, right? Almost a half year before the 9/11 attacks. Oh, but they wait to arrest them then, right? Second wave of arrests and legal actions timed against right before the war resolution. So you have the Lynn Walker thing, you have the shoe bomber Richard Reed, you have the terrorist cell in Portland arrested, you have the Detroit Al-Qaeda terrorist cell arrested, right? 10-4, 10-4, 10-5, 10-5, 10-6. You have the FBI leak report that there's hundreds of Al-Qaeda trained Muslims in America, in these sleeper cells waiting to attack, right? Right, hyping up the theory, and all this stuff was timed right before the vote, right? So here's the vote, resolution vote, and it won over with pretty heartily victory there, 77 and 60, I think 67% win. Then you have the congressional recess. Then you have the elections. Republicans battered the Democrats who had been smeared as unpatriotic, irresponsible, left-wing, bleeding hearts. Also liberals, right, who are soft in terror and not concerned about protecting Americans. If you voted against that, you were dead. Republicans take control of both the House and Senate away from the Democrats. Now they have Senate, Congress, and the president. All right. Bush speeches. Okay, here's the list of Bush speeches, pumping up the fear of WMD. So Bush was pretty active. Look how active he was. 9/11 speech, 9/12 speech, 9/14 speech, 9/21, 9/26, 9/27, 9/28, 10/5, 10/7. This is his big one right before. Big nationally televised speech, right? Pumping up the threat. Trying to make sure right before the vote. Here's the vote. All right. You think this is not timed? You think this is not planned? And people will say, oh, conspiracy theory, you can't do this. What does it take to do this? How hard is it to do this? You know what it takes? It takes maybe you get the key players involved. You get I don't know. You get the President Bush. You get Cheney. You get Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, those guys, right? Condoleezza Rice. You get them together, right? You get a case of beer, right? You find a nice beach. You have a cookout. You cook some hot dogs, whatever. Drink a lot of beer. You get a calendar. You bring a calendar with you, and then people throw out ideas. Okay, let's do this on this day. All right, yeah, let's do this on this day. This is the day we want. Here's our D-Day. Go back. Right, it's a 30-day plan type thing. D-1, D-2, right? How hard is that, right? It's easy. Oh, we can make a phone call here to the director of the FBI. One phone call, right? Right? People are going to say, conspiracy theory, you can't do that. The government can't do that. That's impossible. They're not that smart. Man, if you know anything about U.S. military history, right, this stuff has been done over and over and over. Okay, all right. So time release of lying intelligence reports. Boy, it's so convenient that all these intelligence reports, 6 of them are released. 9/9, 9/12, 9/20, 10/1, 10/5, 10/6, right? Now let's take a look at what Richard Clarke has to say, more what he had to say. This is from his book, right? More Richard Clarke, top U.S. anti-terrorist leader. All right, so here's the connection. Remember Bush said, well, there's no connection between Iraq and Al-Qaeda, right? Clarke, he said that was, I think it was in 2004, that YouTube thing, right? He admits it finally. I'm unaware of any Iraq-sponsored terrorism directed in the United States, Paul, since 1993, and I think FBI and CIA concur in my judgment. Right, John? I pointed at the CIA director, Deputy Director John McLaughlin, who was obviously not eager to get in the middle of the debate between the White House and the Pentagon, but nonetheless replied, yes, that is right, Dick. We have no evidence of any active terrorist threat against, Iraqi terrorist threat against the U.S. It is not hard to understand why, after repeatedly hearing President Bush remarks like that, 70% of the American public believe that Saddam Hussein had attacked the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. So 70% of Americans, this is how crazy, ignorant Americans are, right? I mean, it's just like a Jay Leno street walking thing, right? where Americans are so clueless. I mean, 70% believe that Saddam Hussein did 9/11. Right? Yeah, and it's like the 80% who were in favor of us invading Iraq on back then. I suspect that many of the heroic U.S. troops who risked their lives fighting in Iraq thought, because of misleading statements from the White House, that they were avenging the 3,000 dead of September 11th. What a horrible thing it was to give such a false impression to our people and our troops. Only in September 2003. Oh, okay, it was September 2003. It was only after occupying Iraq, only after Vice President Cheney stretched credulity on Meet the Press, did the president clearly state that there was no evidence Iraq was involved in the September 11th attacks. Right, that's his speech on YouTube. Clark, I doubt that anyone ever had the chance to make the case to him that attacking Iraq would actually make America less secure and strengthen the broader radical Islamic terrorist threat. Did that happen? Absolutely. This spread terrorism worldwide. You had every Yahoo, hot-headed, every dim-witted, hot-headed Muslim male and female, right, get all hyped up to join Al-Qaeda because we attacked Iraq. So it had a profound effect in increasing the terrorist threat. The homegrown terrorist threat didn't exist until after we invaded Iraq. Then you have all sorts of local people who are pissed off, local Muslims, forming cells here. Those are not cells that were foreign cells being planted over here, like sleeper cells that the FBI was talking about, right? Hundreds of radical men, right? Those are homegrown terror cells. Clark, so, we created a homegrown problem. We created the ISIS problem. Nothing America could have done would have provided Al-Qaeda and its new generation of clone groups a better recruitment device than our unprovoked invasion of an oil-rich Arab country, right? You're just feeding propaganda we're giving them propaganda. We're giving them terrorist propaganda, right? Nothing else could have so negated all of our positive acts and so closed Muslims' eyes and ears to our subsequent call for reform in that region. It was as if Osama bin Laden, hidden in some high mountain redoubt, were engaging in long-range mind control of George Bush, chanting, "Invade Iraq. You must invade Iraq." Why? Because this is going to help Al-Qaeda in the best possible way for them, right? He's saying, right, this is totally strategically playing to Al-Qaeda, right? It's about strategy, right? Clark, as an analyst for the Army War College Strategic Studies Institute, written by Jeffrey Record, argues the Iraq War was a strategic error of the first magnitude. Instead of energetically pursuing the priority of creating an ideological counterweight for Al-Qaeda, we invaded Iraq and gave Al-Qaeda exactly the propaganda fuel it needed. The invasion, when it came in 2003, lost us many friends. Polling data has already suggested that the U.S. was not trusted and liked by majorities of Islamic countries. After the invasion, those numbers hit an all-time highs, not only in Muslim countries around the world. In Muslim countries, the U.S. invasion of Iraq increased support for Al-Qaeda and radical anti-Americanism. Elsewhere, we were now seen as a super bully more than a superpower, not just for what we did, but for the way we did it, sustaining international mechanisms that we would later need. When we invaded Iraq, Gallup poll in 1970, Gallup poll said 72% of Americans were in favor of our invasion of Iraq. 72% Americans, right? I've seen higher polls, but hey, 72%, right? That's pretty much all Americans, right? Because you have a group of people who are just strict pacifists, right? No war, right? Don't invade for any reason, right? So this is pretty much all the rest of them, right? So here's a summary. Okay. So once again, here is the layout plan. Now, do I think you're going to memorize? Do I think you're going to remember any of this? you're not going to remember any of it. It's all going to be gone. Right now, all you have is an overall impression, and it's going to fade, right? In a day or so, this can be attacked as crazy, far-fetched, right? No one's going to remember any specific facts here, all right? It's all going to fade, and all you got to do is shift focus and then pump it up, push it in social reality, create a wave of momentum, and that will dominate. So I expect this to be attacked. All right, so let's do a quick review here. All right, so here's the 9/11 attacks. Remember, okay, the Twin Towers, Pentagon, probably the Capitol. You know, it could have been the White House, but probably the Capitol would have been attacked, right? So on that same day, that's when they're planning. Right away, they're planning to take the Al-Qaeda attack and put it on Iraq. So they got the plan, they got the motive right here, right away, right? And that's part of a plan to take down 7 countries, right? Not just one country, but there's 7 countries. This is the day when General Clark ran across that general who was once in his staff and said, listen, oh man, you know, oh sir, we it's worse than that. We got a plan to take down 7 countries in 5 years. Overthrow the governments. And then General Clark is like, my mind was spinning, right? You know, is that the purpose of our military? I thought the purpose of the military was to defend our country, not to like go in and overthrow countries, overthrow governments. Well, we've been actually overthrowing governments for a long time, and a lot of them. I'll get to that later. Let's see, probably lesson 5, I believe. Yeah, it's lesson 5. Okay, so right, that's now 1 year anniversary. They're going to use the 1 year anniversary to do a bait and switch and flip the attack by Iraq. All the terror created by attack by Al Qaeda, and flip it on Iraq, right? And no one's going to be any the wiser. Americans are not going to blink an eye at this, right? You know, it's, oh, okay, all right. It's way, I mean, that's just pathetic, right? Just way too easy to manipulate the American public and the Congress. And this is not the first time this has been done, right? You'll see, I'll cover Vietnam. Here's Vietnam. This is coming up right here. Ooh, man, it's hauling. Here's Vietnam, and this is coming up. They left a plan for this. So here, you know, in this one, they said they had a plan. Well, you know, we haven't seen the plan. Well, here they left a plan in 2 places: foreign relations of the United States and also in the Pentagon Papers, right? 30-day plan. Okay, where are we at here? Okay. All right, so here's a 9/11 attacks here, right? So in this fear environment created by this fear, they took this and dumped it on Iraq, right? They brag about the plan here. We got a plan to like make sure that it's going to be impossible, near impossible for anyone to vote against it, right? And then they had a blitz campaign, fear campaign. Then they start pushing for the resolution, and then they have a big buildup, big buildup here, pump out the big fear, and then you get the resolution vote right here. And the whole backstop was a congressional election right here. Right here's where they leave Congress, right? Here's the vote. This is the leverage right here. Bush administration openly said that they had a meticulously planned strategy to manipulate the public and the Congress and the U.S. allies to take action against Saddam, and that it would make it difficult for someone to vote against it, the Iraq War resolution, right? Okay. Republican Party strategist Karl Rove is on record saying that they must focus must be maintained on talk of war and terror to win the November election. They manipulated the U.S. public and Congress to the bait and switch timed with the 1 year anniversary of 9/11, right? In which they exploited all the fear and horror of 9/11 and then deceptively flipped it onto Iraq, right? You know, I've talked to people about the invasion of Iraq, just offhandedly, you know, acquaintance or whatever, right? And you know what the typical response was? Yeah, we had 9/11. That justifies it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, right? How people think. They then conducted an elaborate fear campaign, timed with the war resolution vote, which was timed right before the congressional recess, which was only 3 weeks before the congressmen and senators go to their home states, right? You know, the last 3 weeks where they campaign for re-election, right? This is the time, this is their last desperate push. This is the time when they're most vulnerable. And it is, if you voted for this damn resolution, good chance you're out of office. If you voted against it. This made voting against the Iraq War resolution difficult, right? They said difficult right here, make it difficult for someone to vote against it, because that would be political suicide, an extreme atmosphere of fear that these guys concocted, right? They pumped this day by day, weapons of mass destruction, ticking time clock, we don't have any time left, right? They can bomb us in any minute, right? The problem's only going to get worse, right? What problem? Nothing. And it worked. Congress voted overwhelmingly for the Iraq War resolution. With the war resolution, the Bush administration had its hot little ticket to war, right? This was the hot little ticket to war. Once they got that vote, boom, they had their war. 72% of the population voted in support of the invasion. Or no, in a poll. I'm sorry. 72% of Americans supported the invasion of Iraq. Now, today, I'm willing to bet no one's going to admit to that. Right? Oh, I never would have supported it. I'm not that stupid. You want to bet people, 72% of people supported it back then. Republicans stole the 2002 election. They took both the House and the Senate away from the Democrats. Right? So Karl Rove's plan worked. Other nations that joined the U.S. invasion of Iraq became targets for terrorism. For example, Britain and Spain, both of them were attacked specifically for their involvement in the invasion of Iraq. For a list of specific methods used by the Bush team to manipulate the U.S. public and Congress, I have an extra credit assignment which lays it. What I have is a thing that lays it all out. I wonder if I have it here. I lay out a well-organized, no I don't. Maybe I do, no. No, I don't. I laid out a well-organized summary diagram showing all the methods they used to manipulate Iraq. Maybe I'll get that together. For a list of specific methods the Bush team used to manipulate, okay. Now we have an exponentially bigger terrorist problem in terms of size, viciousness, worldwide grown national ISIS, right? ISIS became a problem because why? They took territory. They established their caliphate. What they always said they wanted to do, they got done. Now, once they established that territory, what did they have? They had resources, right? They had population, right? They could tax. They had oil, right? So they became an exponentially bigger problem, which we had to defeat. Neocon plan to overthrow 7 governments in 5 years, right? And what does it do? Right? It overthrows them. Why did, if you watch the whole video with General Clark, Wolf would say, we got to overthrow those ex-client states, those Soviet client states, right? What has it done? It's created hotbeds for terrorism. It's created chaos. It's created failed states, hotbeds for terrorism, hotbeds for ISIS to take root, right? Right? Fueling, aiding and abetting a far greater terrorist problem. Neocon, that's neocon foreign policy at work. All right, excuse, rationalization. The Bush administration was given bad intelligence. Oh, this is just a bunch of crap, right? They made up the lies here. Okay. So they manufactured false intelligence on the yellow cake out of Africa. Used evidence rejected by intelligence agencies as unreliable, they said, and untrue, like we're training Al Qaeda on WMD. Pressured intelligence agencies to give them evidence they wanted to get, made their own intelligence agency in the basement of the Pentagon, and relied almost exclusively on the testimony of one man, Chalabi, banker, convicted of bank fraud. This guy's convicted of bank fraud, convicted leader of the Iraq National Congress. Right, he's the guy who said, "Oh, there's biological weapons factories on wheels." Right. All right, so anyways, that's how we got the Iraq Invasion War, and that's how we created a far bigger mess over there. It wasn't just a mess in the country, it was a regional mess. We exacerbated the Shia-Sunni conflict over there, big time, right? Not just within the country, not just unleashing a sectarian war there, but exacerbating the Iran, Shia versus the rest of the Sunni nation conflict. All right, that's it for the first lesson. Maybe we record this because I was kind of ragged.